Well, hi, everybody. I'm Hazel Mae. We are live for this Blue Jays Rewind watch party. You just saw there on the bottom of the third inning, Jose Bautista with that RBI double. That scored Edwin Encarnacion. We can see you. We can hear you. Thank you for joining us on Sportsnet's Facebook page, YouTube, Sportsnet 1, and Sportsnet.ca. Welcome to the party. It's Game 5 of the 2015 American League Division Series. I'm joined by my colleagues. Please say hello to Arash Madani. Hey, Arash.
Hey, Hazel. How you doing? Hope you're staying safe over there.
Everything's great. And joining Arash and I is, of course, Mr. Shai Davidi. Hey, Shai.
Hey, Hazel, Arash. It's great to connect with you guys, even virtually, ideally in person. But it's a fun occasion to reminisce about this game. We were all at this game. So many great memories attached to it. And it's fun to do this in a different way right now.
Absolutely. And the man at the center of this bat flip game, Mr. Jose Bautista, is going to join us a little later on along with a star-studded cast. So sit tight before we get going. On behalf of Shai, Arash, and the rest of the crew, of course, we want to say much love and thank you all to the frontline workers for risking your lives out there so we can all be safe and healthy. And we will talk about our Conquer COVID-19 t-shirts that all three of us are wearing a little later on. So, if you have any questions on Sportsnet's Facebook page or YouTube channel, please get them in early. We want you to join in on the conversation. We want you to interact with our guests. If you have a question for Mr. Bautista, which I'm sure a lot of you do, if you have a question for Arash, for Shai, or for myself, of course, maybe for Gibby a little later on, please send them in early. We hear that there's a long lineup already on YouTube, so thank you, everybody. Arash, what are we in for?
We're in for a treat, Hazel. I mean, it's just surreal actually watching this again live with you guys.
Yeah.
When I watched this game, I was covering it for Sportsnet up in the press box. Hayes, I know you were down on the field, but just seeing some of these faces again. Chris Colabello, how critical he was to that 2015 team, but also just seeing the building packed and just feeling this tension that was mounting and the rivalry that Toronto and Texas had for that 2-year span. You know, Bautista and Odor and Sam Dyson and Elvis Andrews. And, you know, we forget just in this game alone, the benches cleared 3 times that afternoon. And with everything on the line, with a trip to the American League Championship Series, to see these two go at it again, throughout that entire series, it was building, you know, a rivalry that didn't really exist that much during the regular season, but by this afternoon, early in the week, right after Thanksgiving, it had pretty well reached its crescendo.
Yeah, very much so.
Go ahead, Shai.
What's interesting to me is you look back at the way this, as Arash was just mentioning, sort of developed out of nowhere. And you had two teams that had taken similar routes to get to the postseason. You know, both of them had struggled in early parts of the year, slow starts. They were right around 500 at the trade deadline, and they could have gone either way. They could have taken a step back, sold off some pieces, and tried to rebuild. But the Rangers, just like the Blue Jays did, they made some dynamic moves to try and get over the hump. Cole Hamels, who's starting this game here right now, he was a big addition, came with Jake Diekman from the Phillies. That really transitioned things for the Rangers, and they took off right after that. And what ended up being intriguing is that these two teams who had taken these similar paths and had these unusual roads into the postseason start facing each other, and this is where the personality clash happened, and that's why the emotions were running so high. They're just built philosophically so differently in terms of their approach, their outlook on the game, and it just really exploded delightfully in this contest.
It's interesting because, you know, towards the end of that regular season, there was this crescendo building. They get into the postseason for the first time in over 2 decades. Everybody's at an all-time high emotionally. And then, Arash, they go down 0-2, and it just seemed like the sails, like the wind out of the sails, like I think a lot of us were kind of stunned, kind of shocked, because they were a very strong team and they were favored in 2015, not only to advance, but a lot of people have them, you know, they're betting favorites for the World Series. So the fact that they came back was just a huge, I thought was a big story. Of course, winning it all in Game 5 to move on to the LCS was a big story. But the fact that they came back in a short series, being down 0-2, that's a tough sled.
Yeah, no question. And getting a look at Dale Scott here, we're going to visit with the home plate umpire in a little bit. You think back to that 2015 team, guys. You know, just past the 100-game mark when they traded for Tulo. They were 50-51. So nobody really saw them at the end of July being anywhere near October. And it looked like it was going to be a 23-year postseason drought, continuing the longest in all of pro sports. And then something just took off. I mean, they add Tulowitzki, they bring in Ben Revere as a leadoff hitter, they add David Price, which changed everything, and they added a little bullpen help too with LaTroy Hawkins and Mark Howe, and they just turned into a juggernaut. I mean, remember some of those August and September days of the ballpark? They were boat racing teams. I mean, it felt like Tom Brady and Randy Moss and the undefeated Patriots for a little while. Murderers rove a lineup. Who's gonna mash today? Is it gonna be Donaldson? Is it gonna be Bautista? Is it gonna be Encarnacion? Will it be all of the above? So yeah, I mean, when they ran into Texas and to drop 2 at home to open a series, going back to Arlington, you're saying to yourself, is this the end of the line? But they win 2 there in the heat, and so that fan pretty much captures the angst in the building that day of, this has got to happen. It's got to be different this time, right? It's got to be our time for once, right?
And I'm curious, and I know we've got some guests. If they don't know, we've got Ryan Goins coming up. We've got Harold Reynolds coming up. We'll give you the whole lineup in a few minutes. But I'm curious to find out when they knew they had that chance to come back. Was it after that spectacular pitching performance from Marco Estrada in Game 3? Was it a certain play in Game 4? For me, being in Texas and watching Game 3, Marco walking off that mound, I thought, you know what? Maybe they got a shot at this. After their Game 4, did you guys not feel like if they won Game 4 going back to Rogers Center, they're going to win it?
Yeah, I did. And it was interesting. I remember in the off day in Texas when the Blue Jays and when the series shifted to Arlington. And I had a conversation with Gianner Navarro. And Gianner Navarro had the reverse experience of what he did in this series in 2012 with the Cincinnati Reds. They went up 2-0 on the San Francisco Giants. They thought, we're in control, we've got this series, and they ended up dropping 3 in a row. And Gianner's point was, we win 1, and then all of a sudden the Rangers are going to be feeling heat to win it at home, to not have to come back to Toronto, and they won that first game. Estrada just put his foot down and didn't let the Rangers up. And then the next day in Game 4, they ambushed Derek Holland right out of the gate, the first inning. The home runs by Donaldson and Colabello. And you had no doubt at that point they were getting back to Toronto. And then it was going to be really, really tough for the Rangers to beat them. Still, it took a Herculean effort in this game, especially with the way that it played out. But, you really sensed the momentum shifting after that Game 3.
And running into Cole Hamels, though, was going to be one heck of a task, though. We didn't know, we knew a little bit about Marcus Stroman. Let's remember, this was 2015. This is 5 years ago. But we hadn't seen him yet on the postseason stage. We hadn't seen him and what he was about in October. And then to put him into an elimination game, Hayes, totally different situation.
And I think John Gibbons, earlier in the season, when someone asked him, is there a chance Marcus Stroman can come back from that torn ACL in his left knee to pitch in time for the postseason, I thought, if I remember, John Gibbons said it's still far-fetched. And you're right, Arash. That was Game 5 was just his second playoff start. And for a guy that we didn't even think was going to pitch at all in the postseason, it was a pretty remarkable outing. I mentioned the lineup, everybody. Take a look. We are waiting for Harold Reynolds, Ryan Goins, I mentioned, John Gibbons. Arash just tweeted out on his Twitter feed a photo of John. We were taping a segment, And, well, I'll let Arash and Shai fill you in. John Gibbons, always a delight. Dale Scott was a home plate umpire. Of course, he's retired now. He took part in almost 4,000 major league games over a 32-year career. He has some terrific insight in this game. Of course, the man himself, the king, Jose Bautista, is going to drop by a little later on. And of course, our very good friend and colleague, Dan Schulman. So that's what everybody is in store for. So please, if you want to reach out, we want you to join in on the conversation. Get going. Send us your comments. Send us your questions. Ask Arash a question. Ask Shai a question. Of course, ask Jose Bautista a question, and any of our guests. I know everybody's going to be thrilled to have you participate in this conversation. So again, thank you for joining us on YouTube, on Facebook, on sportsnet.ca, and on Sportsnet 1. Okay, we are back to the action there. Shai, tell us about the 3 pitchers that showed up in Game 5 for the Blue Jays. Your thoughts on them?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty incredible when you think about, the points that you guys just made about Marcus Stroman. They apply just as equally to the 2 guys who followed him in this game, and Aaron Sanchez and Roberto Osuna. And their ages, I mean, they just got progressively younger over the course of the game. Stroman right now is 24. Aaron Sanchez was 22. Roberto Osuna was 20. And to think about young kids in this spot pitching the way that they did was remarkable. And, Arash, I believe it was you just made the point of not being sure what you were going to get with Stroman. And it was 5 starts into the regular season that he made in September. But he had that big moment in New York. There was the Jays ended up playing a doubleheader. His first start back, he pitched a great game for the Jays. They ended up sweeping that doubleheader. And it was at that point the division was more or less sewn up. There was, of course, a big series between the clubs back in Toronto a couple weeks later. But when the Jays took that doubleheader in New York, and that really sealed things up. And that was really Stroman's first big moment. And I think cemented in the Blue Jays' mind a little bit about his ability to handle a big stage and big moments.
All right, let us listen in now. You've got Josh Hamilton there at the dish facing Marcus Stroman. We are in for a pretty nice catch from the former Blue Jay center fielder. Let's listen in.
Stroman allowed a run in the first following the leadoff double off the bat of DeShields, and then a solo home run in the third. Hit by Chu. Long foul down the right field line. 2-2 on Hamilton. Pilar coming in, left center. He dives and makes the catch. Woo!
If he doesn't get that ball, nobody gets to it. We've been talking all series about the jumps he gets on the ball, but it's also the explosion and the athleticism. This guy can go get him with the best of them. This ball has no business falling. Look where he starts. Here he comes, Tom.
Well, one thing that he does, Marcus Stroman wants him to play more shallow than for the other starting pitchers. Stroman's philosophy is, hey, if it's hit over your head, that's on me, not on you. And right here, the extra steps in with Stroman on the mound turns into an out.
Man, how many times do we see that from Kevin Pilar over the years? And how many times have we heard and seen the face and voice of our first guest? He is an analyst for MLB Network. He was in the booth as a color man for this bat flip game. There is Harold Reynolds, who for a moment was enemy number 1 in Canada. We'll get to that in a moment. Harold, thanks for making time. Look, so many fans in Canada remember this game, not just in Toronto, but across the country. One of the real big moments, for the Blue Jays. I rewatched the game a couple of days ago, and I think on like 4 or 5 different occasions, you were just talking about how wild it was, how crazy it was. Just how significant a game was this to you as a broadcaster from all the ones that you've covered over the years?
Well, the atmosphere was really what I was talking about probably the most. My mic sounds a little hot. Is it too hot for you guys, or is it okay?
We're good, man.
You sound
okay. You can hear me all right? No, I'd been to Toronto for many years playing in the American League. I spent my whole career there, and even was one of the first teams to come through at that time, the Sky Dome. And it had always been a place that you drew 4 million people a season. And it had been bleak for a few years, but how loud the crowd was. And we stayed at the hotel probably 5 blocks from the ballpark and would walk to the hotel. And it was like going to a parade every day. People were so excited. And it was one of the best atmospheres I think I've ever been around in all pro sports.
Harold, Arash just kind of alluded to you being public enemy number 1. Now, when you and I saw each other during the course of the season, when we were in Game 5, you would say to me, do they still hate me up there? Do they still hate me up there? Now, for anyone who, didn't know at the time, after Game 3, Harold, what did you say that drew, a little bit of backlash from everybody?
All right, well, I have to relive this from
Yes,
the
you
superstar
do.
Hazel
Oh,
Mae,
you got to own this one, Reynolds. You got to wear this one.
I have no problem with this. It got so blown out of proportion. But I'm going to give you the backstory, and then I'll tell you what I said, too.
Okay.
So we were in Texas, and, you go down the field during batting practice, and we're talking about what places you go to where you foul balls off. You can go to New York and hit a rocket into the stands, and people are trying to catch a bullet instead of ducking out of the way. And so we started talking about Canada and playing in Toronto, and we said, hey, most of those guys grew up playing hockey, so the fans aren't there trying to catch bullets. That was the backstory. So by the time I get to the broadcast booth, there's a ball hitting the stands, and we start talking about different ballparks, and I said, hey, Canadians grew up playing hockey anyway. And people lost their mind. And I thought it was fine. I mean, you play hockey in Canada. And so I took the brunt of that real severe. And then I'll let Hazel re-tee this since she took me down this road. Here's what happened when we flew back from Texas to Toronto. This is what
I was going to tell them, this story. But yeah, go ahead. You say it. This is
all right, so I get to customs. And, you got to go through the customs and all that. I get there, and they look at my passport, and the guy looks at my custom, sheet you fill out, and he goes, I know who you are. Great. And so he gives me a hard time. Then we go to get our bags. Everybody's bag showed up except for mine. I had no clothes for like 2 days in Toronto. So they got even with me already.
So I see Harold at the ballpark, and he calls me over and says, Hazel, come here for a second. I've got to tell you something. So he tells me the story, and I start laughing. I'm like, look, we all lose our luggage. It's always delayed. He's like, I'm telling you, they did it on purpose. Like, it was just a sad puppy dog face, like his poor luggage was delayed. I don't know if, did you have a suitcase that was lost too, H, or no?
I did not. My suitcase disappeared. That showed up it was only a couple days we were going to be there. The first day I had to go to a store, go shopping, get some clothes. It got there, I think, the second day or so, and then we flew back out. But it was not a coincidence. It was not a coincidence. I may have thought so had the guy at the customs desk not looked at me and said, oh, I know who you are.
That's a full Rick Monday treatment in Montreal. That's Canadian baseball fans, they definitely don't forget.
Well, the sad story behind that is, growing up in the Northwest in Oregon, you see my Oregon Ducks shirt on, growing up in Oregon and then playing in Seattle for 10 years, we would go to Vancouver all the time. And through the Pacific Coast League, Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, those were all the stops along the way in the Pacific Coast League. And I love Canada. Vancouver's my favorite city in the world and had been to Toronto many, many times. So I felt like I was a Canadian citizen. I played in Calgary. Well, that didn't go over too well. Didn't matter.
Well,
all right, I'm done with that.
It's very strange that something could get blown up in the social media age. I mean, it's hard to believe. But when I was looking through this game, shortly after this series, I listened to you in that 7th inning, and there was so much confusion everywhere. But you identified the rule right off the bat when Martin threw the ball and hit Chu's bat, and you knew immediately. You said, that ball's alive. That shouldn't be a dead ball. Had you seen that happened in a game before? And how did you become so familiar with that rule?
It happened in A-ball for me. We were playing a game. I don't know where, but I was with Wisconsin at the time. Where we were, Wausau Timbers was the name of our team. We were in Wausau, Wisconsin, and I remember that happening. And Bill Plummer, our manager at the time, was a catcher who caught with the big red machine, and he was really big on knowing all the rules. And he got in this huge argument with the umpire. Actually got tossed. The next day, he came back with the rule book and said, "That ball is live." And I never forgot it. So immediately when that happened, when that hit the bat, when somebody's throwing it back and hit Sin-Shu Chu's bat, Russell, I think was the catcher, right? Hit Sin-Shu Chu's bat and it ricochets, and I was like, that ball's live. It's live. And so that was one of those moments that from playing minor league baseball, I'd seen that happen in a game I'd participated in.
Now, Harold, when we're going to be talking to Dale Scott a little later, but in that seventh inning, when you identified exactly the rule and what had taken place, and Dale mistakenly called time, then conferred with the rest of the crew, overall, how did you think he handled the situation?
Well, there's so many things, I have such a different perspective now being in broadcasting because I'm seeing 15 games a day, and so I'm seeing 1,000 games over the course of 2 or 3 seasons, and so many things happen that you just had never seen before, and you always hear that happen. I never seen that one before, never saw that, and so I see things repeatedly. I don't know if Dale had ever seen that in his life. That is once in a million times that's going to happen in a big league game. And so that's what you do. If you don't know, you concur with the other umpires. I think what's happened now is with replay coming into Major League Baseball so much, and we'll start to see it even more in the rest of baseball, but it almost gives the umpires I don't want to say an out, but it gives them a second guess on their own natural instincts because they're so worried about what replay might say and how replay will hold them accountable. So I think it's made it a little more difficult than a natural reaction of the umpires. I see that in several different plays, not necessarily just in that play.
Harold, I wanted to ask you about something. I want to bring this up with Dale Scott as well. In all the other sports, an NFL referee has a mic to the whole stadium and to the audience watching. The NHL, the same. The NBA guys go over to the scorer's table and they go over to the broadcasters. They let everybody in the audience, both in the arena, in stadium, and watching at home, know what's going on. With baseball, that's not the case. And I think a lot of what was happening amidst all the confusion was nobody knew what was going on. Initially, Dale Scott threw the hands up and said time, told Odor to go back to third base. Then he said you can score, and the people watching just see he and Gibbons going at it. I believe that they should put a mic on those umpires in a situation like that, just to let everybody know what is happening in the rare time you run into an abnormal situation. What do you think about that?
Well, I totally agree. I've always said that I felt like the umpires should have a microphone. I think we're going to move to that. But the answer I've gotten in the past was, even that play right there, you've got 3 or 4 base runners running on the play. So you got to know where you're going to place guys at, what exactly are you looking at. And that's why they have so long with the conversation. So unlike football, where we're very common with it saying, that was offsides on such and such, and they tell you 15 yards or whatever it might be, right? In baseball, a ball might hit off the outfield fence. The outfielders collide, somebody knocks the ball down and away, or maybe gets stuck in the fence. You got runners running all over the field. So now you're trying to figure out who am I placing where. So there's 3 or 4 different scenarios that happen on the play. It's why they can't really explain it to the audience. And I get that, but I still would rather have them say, we're looking to see where we're going to place the runners. There's 3 guys moving on this play. The ball might be dead in the outfield. We're going to look at this. I'd rather hear that than what we have right now.
Before we ask you about Jose Bautista's home run there in that bottom of the inning, when the debris first started coming on the field, Harold, after the fans, because they didn't know what was going on. I remember you saying on the broadcast that you thought, maybe they would stop or pull the players off the field. From your vantage point up there in the booth, what were you thinking? Were you really concerned for the players out there that things were going to get out of hand because there was no information to the fans? They didn't know what was going on.
Yeah, and obviously player safety is first. Safety for anybody's first. Even a fan in the lower decks, you throw something from the third deck, it's going to hit somebody maybe in the first row. With that kind of confusion, I think they should have taken the players off the field. I've been in enough games where people have thrown debris, and I've watched a player get attacked by a fan, and Bill Spires gets attacked. I saw a coach at first base have somebody jump over the stands and attack him in a physical confrontation. So you just don't know what the other person is thinking. And so the best move is to pull everybody off, and you can always set them back. And once you calm and you find out what's going on, then you can. I saw beer cans. It was not a cup. It was cans. And those are full cans. Those are dangerous. And they're coming from the third deck or the fifth deck in Toronto and different things like that. So, yeah, I was more concerned with the danger of somebody throwing and somebody getting hit by whatever object might be coming down.
Harold, there was that
Boy, you guys are coming with some hard-hitting stuff tonight. I figured, Friday night, Hazel Mae, this is going to be great. Yeah, Hazel, I'll do this, no problem. Yeah, she's been sitting there like Judge Judy on me. All right, see you.
We haven't had anything to do in 6 weeks, Harold. I mean, come on now. We've had a lot of time to think about this.
That's
this
right.
is
Shy, man. I thought you were looking out for it, brother. Okay. See?
We always come in hot here. You know that. No, so it's a wild atmosphere, right? And the crowd is into it. But then the emotions between the teams too. I mean, it's such a combustible mix when you have not only are the fans super angry, the teams are really angry at one another too. I mean, how many times have you seen quite that combination of emotion, but in the crowd, on the field, two teams with that kind of intense dislike playing out?
Yeah, not very often. I mean, this was a great series. This is one that you look back and go, it's one of the greatest in history, right? That's why we're talking about it. So you don't have all these variables come together at one time. You've got amped up fans, two teams that are fighting. It's a Game 5 elimination game. They've had great games through. Guys have been talking trash to each other. They've faced pitchers. They've been pitching guys inside. I mean, this was a great, epic series, and you had a combination of so many things that happened. Watch how hard he goes in to take this guy out. He's just trying to get a routine force out at second base, and he's trying to take him out. That's how hard this series was played.
You just saw Ryan Goins there. You had a lot of praise for the Blue Jays defensively on that Pilar catch we just saw there, on that fly ball from Josh Hamilton. And Ryan Goins, you heaped a lot of praise. This was a team, as we all know, that really made their mark with their offense, their home runs, Harold. How impressed were you with how they were able to defend out there on the field?
Well, they were very athletic. This was really a great Blue Jay team. I think you guys talked about how young Stroman was. You're catching guys at the beginning of this curve. Bautista is getting ready to be one of your guests. Was in the prime of the epic Bautista years up there in Toronto. So this was really a team that was at they were peaking. It was at a point where they were just getting ready to take off to a whole nother level. So they were a very fun, exciting team. They were very athletic. That's why they defended so well. And anytime you have a team that plays on AstroTurf, you have to build a club according to that turf because you have to be athletic enough to cover it. And I thought they did everything that they could to put a team together that really defended well.
Yeah, tell you what about that team. We talked so much about the superstars, but you look at the left side of the infield, Tulowitzki Donaldson was the MVP that year. But what they got out of Colabello and Goins. It was some of the younger price, the lower priced players who were so critical to what they did that year.
Especially Colabello down the stretch. I mean, he had big home runs, and he really, in this series, I remember actually walking to the hotel. He and his wife were staying in the same hotel, and he became a star attraction in Toronto. Walking down the street with him, people were gravitating to him, and he'd really had some big hits for them. And really, he had a great time right here. It was one of his probably best years in the big leagues for him.
Harold, before I ask you about that bat flip, I want to get this viewer question in before we say goodbye to you. No rush, okay? Derek from YouTube asks, what do you think of the current Jays team, and which player, Harold, impresses you the most? Thank you, Derek.
Well, thanks, Derek. Appreciate that. I actually spoke with Bo Bichette today. I've known Bo since he was a little tyke. So I was speaking with him and his mom and his dad. I played with Dante and played against him quite a bit. And so I've known Bo a long time. So Bo Bichette, obviously, Guerrero, the three kids of baseball players, Biggio. I think they've got a really solid foundation that they're starting to build. They're still a little ways away, but those three are really going to be cornerstone for where they're headed to. And I think you continue to add from there. I wish I knew the roster more, but I haven't seen the Blue Jays play in like 8 months. So
neither have we.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Your answer is Bo Bichette, which is a good player to.
Well, I think the thing about Bo Bichette that gets overlooked is his defense. He's a guy that can play on that carpet. He's athletic enough to play shortstop. There, I know obviously the bat, he took off and he had an amazing first couple weeks, and then he just continued to carry that on to the end of the season. But defensively was a question mark, and he really played the carpet better. The difference between AstroTurf and regular grass is you have to be fleet of foot. You have to be more athletic. You're going to have to cover more grounds. The ball's going to be faster getting to those infielders, and you're going to have different angles that you have to throw from at shortstop. So that's why his arm strength comes in a little bit more. And he's going to make some errors because the game's going to be a little bit faster playing with him. But once he figures out the nuances and who can run and who can't, who I can take time with, he's going to be a dynamic shortstop. But right now the offense is ahead of the defense, but he's a really good player.
It's funny you mentioned Bichette, Harold, because when I had a chance to talk with Bo at spring training, he said that during the off season, he actually watched this game, and he watched the 2015 ALCS and the 2016 postseason because he wanted to see the stadium packed. He wanted to hear and see just how crazy it could be, and he said that's what got him motivated on some of those off-season mornings when he wasn't really feeling it. He would see what the stadium would be like, and Shai, we saw what the stadium could be like, man.
Yeah, definitely. And Harold, this is what everybody's waiting for, bat flip. And I want to ask you about the bat flip, but I also want you to think about bat flips in general 5 years on from this series. And what did you think about the bat flip in the moment? And has your opinion changed? Do you feel the game is more accepting of bat flips and guys watching their homers, for lack of a better way to put it, pimping their homers a little bit?
Well, when this happened, I thought it was perfect for the moment. I mean, it's a walk-off game winner. And it was fitting for Bautista's reaction with the crowd and the all the stuff we've talked about. This game was at a high level of intensity. It was perfect for the moment. I think where we've gotten to now in baseball, that's become April 28th in the afternoon game, home run in a 10-1 game. Somebody's doing that, and it's become acceptable. So that's kind of the generation that we're playing right now in. Baseball has so many changes through the years. I mean, this is 2015 we're looking at, and you look at how much the roster has changed with the Blue Jays in 5 years. That's how much our game has changed so much. When I was coming through the big leagues, I would play against the Milwaukee Brewers, and they would have had guys play together for at least 10 to 12 years. Same team every year I'd be facing. Here comes Jim Gantner, here comes Robin Yount, here comes Paul Molitor, here comes Cecil Cooper. I could name the guys right now I was going to see this year, next year, the next 3 years. That doesn't happen in today's game. And so with that, I think also the changes of how the game is played, where a few years ago it was get deep in the count, we want guys to walk. Now we got guys being aggressive. Now we want home runs. Now we're saying put the ball in play. And now we're saying pimp homers. It's okay. It's cool. Do it for the kids. Let them play, or whatever the slogan was. And so that's where we're at. My generation, that would not have ever played. Even Bautista's homer might have been frowned upon. But that's where we've come, and that's where you're at. So you have to accept what each generation likes to do and how they want to play. You know, Ken Griffey Jr. wore his hat backwards in late 80s, and everybody frowned at him. Now, I think every kid in the world wears a hat backwards, and if they wear it forward, everybody thinks something's wrong with them. So that's kind of how the world changes, and you have to accept it. And I don't have a problem with it.
You mentioned Bo Bichette. He wears his hat backwards. We're looking at this graphic of Marcus Stroman. Speaking of someone who exudes a lot of emotion on the mound, what are your thoughts on Stroman? Harold, I know as a Blue Jay, he had that torn ACL that he battled back from. There was so much potential in him being this franchise's ace one day. Now he's with the Mets. What are your thoughts on Marcus Stroman as a ball player and the way he carries himself?
Well, it's funny because when he was in Toronto, he'd gone through that rehab and went back to college at Duke University, which is one of the higher institutions in America, and went back and got his degree. And so you had him painted as almost like this Ivy League with the T-shirt, the collar, and he's very educational. Now you would think he's more hip-hop, and he'd be hanging out with Drake more than he'd be hanging out with Willie Mays. You know, so I think he fits New York. I love his enthusiasm, whether it was in Toronto or whether it's wherever he's pitching at. It's infectious. He jumps off the mound. There's a charisma and a character to him, but it's who he is. So we've watched Marcus Stroman grow up into the personality he is now. And you've watched him evolve as a rapper and everything else that is of his true nature and his true character. And I think you see all that with his do-rag and everything else when he's pitching on the mound. It's not fake. It's just who he is. And, again, you have to accept that. If he was jumping off the mound when I was playing, everybody had been screaming at him from the other dugout. You know, so that's just kind of how it is. Get on the mound, man. What you doing?
Guys are jumping off the mounds. Guys are screaming off the mounds. They're flipping their bats. It's a new time.
It's a different time. But at the end of the day, all you need is one person to get upset, and that baseball hurts. And when somebody hits you with it, it's an equalizer. And pitchers, regardless of how much they want to dance or prance or yell or scream, tell guys to sit down, someone hits a home run off them, they're not going to enjoy it very much. And so they have a tendency, I think, sometimes to retaliate. And you're back at it. So it's always going to be a conversation.
We enjoyed very much your company tonight. Thanks for the stories. Thanks for the answers. Thanks for the insight. As we look back on this, it's officially, I guess, Game 5 of the 2015 ALDS. We just call it the backflip game up here, where we don't just play hockey.
No, you don't. And I actually had to go on Fox News and link up with the #1 TV network up there in Toronto and explain to all of Canada and apologize. So if you're still holding that against me, I'm sorry. I know you can play baseball. Larry Walker, congratulations, is in the Hall of Fame. Hopefully he gets to enjoy that this summer in Cooperstown. And he's Canadian.
All right, Harold, appreciate the time, man.
Hey, appreciate you guys. Thank you for having me. Hazel, great seeing you as always.
See you, H. Take care of yourself.
Take care. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks,
Bye
Harold.
now.
Stay safe, man.
Thank you.
Harold Reynolds of MLB Network, who is a color analyst on Fox for the backflip game.
And the guy, Arash and Shai, the guy works like 1 billion hours. If you watch MLB Network on a regular basis, he's on MLB Tonight. He does all the demos in Studio 42. He's out there doing 30 clubs in 30 days. And when I worked with him, he was kind of the glue that kept us all together when we first launched the network. The man just does not sleep. His work ethic is unbelievable. He'll go out, he'll speak to everybody, anybody, their aunt, the player's uncle, their parents. he will not leave a stone unturned. And off the field, a great guy, a great colleague, and no one works harder than Harold Reynolds. So it's a treat for me every time we get to run into each other during the postseason.
Yeah,
all right, still
definitely.
to come. Go ahead, Shai.
I was going to say definitely with Harold, and the one thing is that guys gravitate to him too around the game, and he's got that infectious personality and the energy. That he's got a story for every occasion. He's seen so much within the game, and people love sharing that with him for sure.
All right, you're watching Blue Jays Rewind Watch Party. Thank you, everybody who are watching us on Sportsnet Facebook page, on YouTube channel, on sportsnet.ca, on Sportsnet 1, Arash Madani, Shai Davidi. I'm Hazel Mae. We are getting ready to welcome in the man of the hour, Jose Bautista, a little later on, and we're going to get some insight from home plate umpire Dale Scott. But I want to reach out to Arash, because Arash is about to introduce a former Blue Jay on that 2015 team, and just, I guess, get your thoughts on Ryan Goins.
Yeah, just a few moments ago we saw him up there at the plate, and Ryan is good enough to join us here as we watch the bat flip game again. And Ryan, thanks so much for making time. When you get a chance to watch this again, man, when you get the opportunity to kind of relive this, what goes through your mind through all of this?
I couldn't hear you right there. You cut out.
Yeah, I just wonder what goes through your mind, man, when you watch this game and you see that stadium packed and you get to relive this thing all over again.
You get the chills, honestly, just watching it. My parents were just watching it earlier, and just kind of going over the game. I'm like, I really don't know what happened the first 6 innings, but just seeing how packed it was. I guess when you're in the game, you don't really realize how many people are there, and just to see how many people were actually in the stadium and how loud it was pretty impressive.
Hey Ryan, as that series played out, I mean, you guys didn't have much history with Texas beforehand. Like, how did the emotions get so high in that series over the course of those 5 games?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they beat us pretty well at home, and then we went down there and spanked them at home pretty good. So, I think it was just the bat flip and all the tension that kind of went into the game of how they went ahead in the game, how we came back, and then the next year as well. I mean, you can obviously tell they didn't let that go, and then doing it to them again the next season in the playoffs again was just that much better.
I think back to a lot of the little moments in the first 2 games where the tension slowly arose. You think about the moment between Kayla and Josh Donaldson in Game 2 in extra innings, but one play that didn't get a lot of attention was in Game 2, 11th inning. There was a ground ball to third base. You took a force at second, and Mike Napoli started a slide super late and basically ended up in left field with his leg up high. And it was a slide that not too many people really appreciated, certainly on the Blue Jays side. But the way that was played, that play, what did you feel about that slide, and how were those interactions at the base paths fueling the rivalry?
Yeah, I mean, and I think this might have been before the whole sliding rule too, or it might have been the same year it happened. But Mike Napoli is definitely one of those guys who's going to do whatever he can to break up a double play. And if he comes in there hard, I mean, there's not really much I can do. He'd probably eat me if we fought, so that wouldn't be very smart of me. So hopefully I'd have some teammates behind me to help me out. I'm a little guy, so. He's not really a guy I want to get into it with, but yeah, I mean, everybody was playing hard, and I think if it was turning around the other way, we'd have guys going in hard at second base as well.
Hey Ryan, before Arash asks another question, I've got a question from Samantha on Facebook. She asks you, Ryan, what was it like being on base during that 7th inning? Thank you, Samantha.
Yeah, I mean, being on third, watching bats take that swing, it was I blacked out, honestly. I can't really remember anything until we emptied the benches when Eddie and Dyson got into it. I can't really remember what happened or whatnot, but watching it over again, watching my reaction, and then watching, like, if you watch in the bottom of the screen, Eddie will be jumping around like he's 10 years old. And Stroh's basically on the third baseline, and like whole dugout's emptied. So it's it's good to know I wasn't the only one going crazy. So
Even Pete Walker was out there. He was almost in the on-deck circle with a couple of fist pumps, man.
Yeah, it was a full dugout effort for sure.
So, Ryan, for you, first this, and then the following May comes the fight in Arlington, and then, as you mentioned, sweeping them in 2016. You're a Texan, man. I mean, you went to high school in Round Rock. You went to college in Dallas. The Rangers play in Arlington.
Oh, yeah.
What was it like for you when you're going back home and all these people, were they giving you the stink eye, or what was that all about?
I mean, after the fight, yeah, but beating them out of the playoffs, I mean, I was always a Rangers fan growing up, honestly. We always went there for vacations, and they have, like, the Six Flags right across the street, so we would always do that whole deal. And then after the fight, you know, I think there's a little bad blood there, and then every time we'd play them after that, we'd I get a couple of texts from my buddies and things like that, asking if there's going to be fights, if they should watch the game, and I'm like, it's not going to be that bad.
And then it was.
And then it was.
Hey, Ryan, stick around. We want to get everybody to listen in on the broadcast because we've got an Andrus at bat, and I think you know what happens here. So let's watch and listen together on this Blue Jays Rewind.
Suffered the knee injury in September, underwent arthroscopic surgery, and Hamilton was back a week later.
Incredible. Pinch hit, and then came back and played 13 days later, started and played 9 innings. Boy, that was a tremendous pitch right on the corner. It's a big at-bat, Tom.
Strong throwing arms in center field and right field, less so in left field for Toronto.
0-2 on Andrews.
Wow. What a catch by Russell Martin. This ball missed by about 3 feet. Look where he's set up at. Look where it starts, and it just runs. Remember, he's anticipating this ball coming back to the plate, and it didn't. Great reactions, tremendous catch.
Two and two. Hamilton takes his lead off second. Texas Rangers with a 2-1 lead, top of the 6th.
Three straight two-seamers that he missed with, trying to run back over the outside corner of the plate. It's not the same comeback movement.
Playoff pitch to Andrews, up the middle, backhanded by Goins to first for the 3rd out of the inning.
What did Strode say to you afterwards in the dugout? Do you remember?
No, I couldn't even tell you right there. You know he's pumped for sure, but he's one of those guys that's easy to play defense behind. He works so fast. He keeps everybody on their toes. I think that's a lot of those plays happen when he pitches. I think that's one of the reasons why, just by how fast he works and keeps the whole defense in the game.
Ryan, you know, it's interesting. It's only 5 years after, not quite 5 years after, and we're doing this watch party tonight. Still around the holidays, you see people with Christmas sweaters, Merry Flippin' Christmas. I mean, this was the game that so many remember. You're, of course, around in 16 and 17, but since you bounced around KC, Philly, Chicago, Oakland, when you think back to your time in Toronto, to this era specifically, what did that mean to you, man, as a ball player, as a guy coming up, as a young athlete? What stands out from your time here?
Just watching the fan base grow. I mean, I can remember my first home game, probably 8,000 to 10,000 people there, you know, And it's not that it's hard to get ready to play in the big leagues, but when it's 50,000 in the stands, it makes it way easier to run out on that field every night and play. And, and that continued in 2016, 17 as well. It was packed, and then getting to come back in 2018 and getting a standing ovation when I came in the game was pretty special, just to know that the fans appreciated what you did for so long and for the organization.
All right, Ryan Goins, a former member of those exciting 2015 and 2016 American League champion teams. Thank you for doing this. Hey, quickly, before we let you go, what are you up to these days, Ryan?
What's that?
What are you up to these days? You've got tons of fans still here north of the border.
Not much, honestly. Right now, just work out every day, pretty much. I'm becoming a pretty good cook, so I'm pretty excited about that. Other than that, I've been watching a lot of old college football games that have been on. I've been watching that. I got into Ozark, but okay. Tonight I was trying to bet my dad on the game, but he wouldn't bet me to see who would win. So.
That's so unlike you, Ryan.
He was saying if I gave him 4 runs, he'd take it, but.
Nice.
I said no to that.
I mentioned you had some great fans. Do you want to say, we haven't seen or heard from you for a while. Is there anything you want to tell Blue Jays fans right now before you say goodbye?
Honestly, just like I said when I left, thank you guys for everything. Thank you for being so passionate. And baseball back to the city where people are super passionate and want to enjoy the game. It was I would say it was probably the best 5 years of my life so far to go and play in front of that fan base. So just thank you guys so much.
Yeah. Well, Ryan Goins, you always were a grinder. You always worked hard, and I know Blue Jays fans appreciate it. It is great to see you, Ryan. Be well, be healthy, and I hope all of our paths will cross down the road. Thanks for doing this.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Stay safe, you guys.
Thanks, Ryan.
All right, that was Ryan Goins. He was one of these guys, Shai and Arash, that was always available to the media. I feel like he was always very honest about the way he played the game. He was, he was one of these guys where he knew that he wasn't one of the star players, but he never let that get to him. He always told me that kind of motivated him when, a lot of the spotlight were shone on JD or Bautista or Tulo, but he always went out there and worked his butt off, and we always saw him do some early work out there and take an optional BP, and I give him credit. He always was a grinder, and he always worked hard, and he was a defensive wizard, as you guys know.
Yeah, definitely, Hazel. And he came up with a rep as a great defensive player, but that 2015 season when Devin Travis was having some of his issues, he stepped up, and he wasn't just a great defender, he was a super strong offensive player as well.
All right, let's watch this Edwin Encarnacion home run.
We are tied at 2.
Floated around inside one too many times. On 2-2, they were going to go in on Bautista. And Cole shook him off and went away, and then he got them pop up 3-2. First pitch inside, and he smoked it. Mr. Encarnacion.
The Bautista backflip obviously is the moment and the signature play. But man, did Edwin have some big clutch moments as a Blue Jay, didn't he? What?
If you remember during the season, sorry, Shai, for interrupting. In the series, the Rangers did everything possible to try to avoid pitching to Edwin. I think he was intentionally walked 3 times over that 5-game series, and I remember reading John Gibbons saying something to the effect that it was just a matter of time before Edwin Shai was going to erupt or explode. There's only, you can only, what was that Harold Reynolds saying, you can only play with fire for so long before you get burned, and I feel like that was another example of that with Edwin, all those intentional walks.
Well, for sure. And they were super careful. It was interesting because the Rangers on multiple occasions had tried to trade for Edwin Encarnacion. John Daniels, their general manager, was a big fan of his. And obviously the Blue Jays weren't willing to give him up at any point. But they had made a determination that they weren't going to let him beat him in this series. And they pitched him that way. And this was one of the few times Cole Hamels got gave him something around the plate that he could do some damage with. And this homer got completely overshadowed. But it was a critical play in this game.
Man, that building was rocking that day, wasn't it? Wow.
You can, honestly, you can watch this over and over and over again, and it still kind of gives you chills. Just how loud it was there at Rogers Center. And someone who experienced that was the home plate umpire. And I think we may have Dale Scott with us. Let's just double check there. Yes, he is. Hi, Dale.
Hello, he is.
Thank you for joining the Blue Jays Rewind watch party. I told everybody earlier that you, after 32 seasons, retired in 2017 after working almost 4,000 games. Yet I've read you saying that this game and maybe that 7th inning, Dale, was the most memorable in your career. Why?
Well, thanks for having me, by the way. I had nothing else going on, like everybody else. You
and the rest of the world, Dale.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm glad you caught me. But I was 103 games short of 4,000. Unfortunately, my career ended in Toronto when I got hit and had my last concussion in 2017, almost exactly 3 years ago, as a matter of fact. But this game was unbelievable, and I heard Harold talking earlier, and shout out to Harold with Go Ducks. This series was unbelievable, but if you if you just boil it all down to the 7th inning of this game, man, I tell you what, I've had 3 World Series, 3 All-Star games. This actually, as it turned out, was my last postseason game ever. It was my 91st one and last one. I didn't work it in 2016, and then I got hurt, and I in early of 2017, and I was done. So it was remarkable because that 7th inning was absolutely insane.
And that 7th inning, let's get to that. Let's start with the top of the 7th, Dale. Did you know immediately what had happened when Russell Martin threw that baseball? Like, did you, when you called mistakenly timeout, did you see what happened in real time?
Well, I did, and I'll tell you what, and Harold said it a few minutes ago pretty well. I mean, this is, again, almost 4,000 games, a rule I've never seen, a situation I've never seen. What happened was when Russell threw the ball back, I saw it hit, I saw it go off. I got it confused with a rule we had actually earlier in that season, which was it was in Milwaukee. It was a runner at first, less than 2 outs. There was a runner at first, less than 2 outs. A ball in the dirt that the hitter swung and missed for strike 3. The catcher blocked it, and the ball kind of came out in front of the plate. And as the as the batter was walking back to the dugout, he inadvertently kicked the ball. The runner advanced to second. It was inadvertent. There's a rule that it's just basically is all bets are off. Nobody can advance. The guy's out, and we just like nothing happened. Now, if there's intent there by the hitter or something else, that's a whole different story. But when this happened in Toronto, in the heat of the moment, I saw it happen. I confused it with that rule there. I called time, and I swear it was 2 or 3 seconds after my hands are up in the air. I said, "Oh, wait a minute, that ball's live. That's not dead." But I had just called it dead. So I was pretty confident that I had screwed up by calling the ball dead there. It's so funny. I remember this so like it was yesterday. The ball went off toward third base, but the Blue Jays were in a shift, and so there was nobody even near the ball. And so when I got the crew together, once I called time, and Jeff came out and he said, hey, that's a live ball, and I said, well, at that point I can't just unilaterally change things. I get the crew together. That's our protocol, and that's what I did. I got the crew together. I said, guys, I'm pretty sure I just screwed up here, and I think that ball's live. And they said, well, what exactly happened? I told them. They said, yeah, that ball's live. I said, okay. I said, now the ball was nowhere near a fielder. Is that correct? I mean, my calling time didn't stop somebody from making a play on that ball. And I knew the answer, but I wanted to get it from them also. They said, you're absolutely right. There was, even if you had not called time, Odor, first of all, he spread it. I mean, down the line when the ball was hit, or was hit the bat of Shu, and everybody said, no, there's no way they would have made a call or made a play if you had kept the ball alive like you should have. And so I said, well, okay, that's what we're going to do. I'm going to score this run. And that's my exact words. I said, guys, I'm going to score this run. I'll take care of John. John Gibbons.
So let's stop you right there, Dale, because before you tell us your version of what happened with Mr. Gibbons, there's somebody who has a message for you here tonight.
I can't wait.
Just want to say hello to all my friends out there in beautiful Canada. So I'm glad to be with you. I know three of my favorite hosts. With Hazel, Arash, and of course Davidi. I wish you guys the best too. But thanks for the invite. And I understand Dale Scott's going to be on the show tonight. First off, I want to say Dale's one of my favorite guys, umpires of all time. I think we go back to the Texas League because we were together in the minor leagues, and genuine guy, one of the better umpires in the game, and he happened to be behind home plate that big fifth game. They scored the go-ahead the run to put them in the lead right there. And then, and I didn't know. I saw what happened, but I did not know the rule. It just didn't occur to me. I could not remember ever seeing that play. I'm sure maybe I had, but what just registered with me was dead ball. It hit the guy, and so I went out there and argued in old classic Dale Scott fashion. Great composure, fair. Would let you argue, would let you holler at him, but he always kept things under control. And once again, he did it again that night. But it was a crazy night. If they go on to win that game, even though they got the play right, if Texas goes on and wins that game, I'm sure it would have been a crazy place and it would have been a controversial play. But they did get it right, like they do most of the time. They catch a lot of heat from us, but those guys are really, really good. And Dale Scott was one of the best. So I wish him well. I wish I could be on the show with him, but I said my best to him and all them other grumpy old guys that couldn't play the game, so they became umpires.
Vintage John Gibbons.
John's a classic. John's a classic. If you want me to tell you, during that argument, I just told him. I said, after I said, hey, listen, it was one of those situations where, John, we got the play right. We didn't look real good doing it, but we got it right. And that's what counts. And he said, well, he wanted to protest, and he did, and we can talk about that later. But finally, I just said, John, do you want to get run over this? He goes, no, I don't want to get run. I don't want to get run. I said, okay. I said, but this is what we're doing, and so we need to move on now. And sometimes in those situations where it's just a weird play, a weird situation, you just ask them, hey, do you want to get run or not? Because this is what we're going to do. And so you just need to decide if you want to stay here, if you don't want to stay here. The thing is, he never cussed me. He never did any of that awful stuff. So, so he didn't get run that way. But I like John. John's a great guy. And there's a lot of managers that I've dealt with, and we didn't always see eye to eye on certain things, but he was always fair with me.
Dale, I mean, you mentioned, you gotta get ready for John because he's coming, and you think about the magnitude of the situation, but the crowd started getting really unruly, and then obviously the debris started. But when you're in that situation and you're trying to manage not only the importance of a major league game, but a deciding playoff game, and then there's a crowd that's threatening to turn into an angry mob. Can you describe all the different things that are going through your mind in terms of how you can keep a lid on things and try to maintain some sort of order?
Well, you know, there's a crowd of 50,000 or whatever that place holds. There's two dugouts that are competitive and half insane, you know, because of the situation. There's a television audience around the world, and we're the guys that we're paid to try to keep this thing in control. And so you just try to just take it one step at a time, okay, this is what happened, how are we going to deal with this, this is what we're going to do, you know, here, I'll explain this to him, or whatever. You know, the situation's coming up here any second now, and
good memory,
you know, once exactly, I was tipped off. You know, once this thing started, and then when John protested the game. And by the way, why isn't John on here? I mean, what's he doing? He's out. I mean, no one's out and about, for crying out loud. I mean, what the hell? But you know, once everything starts rolling, now we have protocol that we have to do. And once he protests the game, now I've got to go back to go on the headphones, and I've got to tell. There it is. Yeah. Yeah, and I said,
as Martin went to throw it back to the pitcher.
Well, why is it dead? Why is it dead? That ball's alive.
Well, Dale Scott signaled immediately.
That ball's alive.
Unless he thought that Chu crossed over the plate.
No, what Chu's doing, just getting ready. He's just getting ready to hit again. He's just standing there getting ready to hit. Watch this. He's getting himself ready to hit. And that's just a throwback and a hit the bat. That's not Chu's fault. That is not interference. That's the same motion. He does that every at bat.
So Dale, do you have to interpret intent here as the home plate umpire? Does that weigh into it at all? On Chu's front?
It certainly does. If I felt that Chu had done something intentionally to try to deflect that baseball, well, that's a whole different story. But there was no doubt in my mind that there was no intent there. He was just doing what he always does, and so, you know, so when it catches so by surprise. Like I said, I've never seen this before. This had never, almost 4,000 games, never had, even in the minor leagues, never saw this. Now, we're getting together now, and as you could tell, as I always do, I put my hand over my mouth because I don't want to be lip reading going on. We don't want any lip reading to figure out what's going on here. I had already turned off my microphone, so Fox Sports couldn't hear what I was saying. But you know, I told the guys, I said, listen, this is on me, guys, but we got to correct this. And now, I had said earlier, if that ball had gone, you know, straight to a fielder, if the reflection, or I should say deflection, had gone right to a fielder, if my calling time had stopped something, that's a whole other story too. I'm going to have to live with the timeout. But it was obvious to me that even though I made a mistake, we could correct this mistake because there was absolutely no way a play was going to be made on the runner, and that's the reason we were able to score that run. And I didn't have to live with a you know, one of the biggest blunders in playoff history. You were talking about stuff coming out. I remember when I was talking to John at one point. At one point, something caught my eye. A battery whipped by me. It was like a C battery from a transistor radio or something. And I thought, well, this is nice.
Wow.
What's John saying to you right now? What's he saying?
Well, John. First of all, he just, you know, the ball's dead. He said, the ball's dead. The ball's dead. They just put it back to bat. The ball's dead. Everything's dead. You know. And I said, no, it's not. It's not. Even though I did call it, and I explained to him. I said, John, if one of your fielders had a play on that ball and stopped because of my timeout, that's on me, and I'm going to have to send him back, and I'm going to have to live with that. But I said nobody was near that baseball. And so my calling time had zero effect on that guy scoring. The other thing is that the runner, like I said, he took off immediately. He sprinted down. I mean, there was no delay. So we say an umpire or sports officiating, common sense and fair play. And the fair thing to do, even though I had initially made a mistake calling time, is to say, hey, listen, my calling time had nothing to do with this guy. He scores, and that's the right thing to do.
Dale, I was asked, we were talking to Harold Reynolds earlier. I think you were watching some of it. Look, in most other sports, the head referee is either mic'd up or they can communicate with either the broadcasters and or the scorer's table or the whole stadium. I think what a lot of people, the 50,000 who are there, the millions watching at home, they had no idea what was going on because, as you mentioned, 1 in a million chance, something you hadn't seen before,
right,
that naturally they probably hadn't seen before. Do you think if you were actually mic'd up and you could communicate to the crowd or to the broadcast booth, that could help baseball down the road?
Well, maybe I'm giving you some news here. You're going to have the new contract with the umpires this year. The crew chiefs will be explaining all replays, and just like the NFL, just like the NBA.
Kidding.
Yeah, it's happening. In fact, the only reason we haven't done it yet is because of this virus. I was just talking to Dan Isonia, who I worked with for 10 years, and he's a crew chief this year, and he was telling me how they are being taught and learning, how to address with the microphone, how to address the TV audience and that kind of stuff with these certain things. So it's coming, guys. Once we finally get some baseball back, you're going to be hearing the crew chiefs explaining plays.
Hey Dale, with the fans throwing debris and it's obviously tensions are high, at any point did you and the rest of the crew, were you worried about your safety? I mean, it's a postseason game, so there is an uptick in police presence and security. But after seeing, the 18-minute delay with all the debris and the fans, being very upset, how concerned were you and your crew from that moment on till the end of the game?
Well, it's a concern. It's not only a concern for our crew, it's a concern for the players, specifically Texas, obviously, but any of the players. I mean, that's a tough situation, and I know how upset people were, but that's just wrong. Even if you're not trying to hurt someone, you can easily hurt someone. It's funny, though, one of the police officers came up to me. He was standing next to me at one point. I don't remember exactly when. It might have been in between innings after all this was over. But he said, listen, when this game's over, we're going to have a police officer for every umpire, all 6 of you guys. And he goes, I don't know what you want to do, but my suggestion is that you get the heck off of this field as quickly as possible. I said, well, that's usually our goal every game. But I certainly understand the importance of it this game. Here's a shot here. You can see how he broke immediately when that ball went, and there was not a fielder even close. And that's part of the reason why we were able to correct that mistake and score him. And then John at one point he said, well, I want to protest. And anytime now, first of all, let me backtrack also. I'd never seen this rule before in all the games I worked. I've never had a protest in all the games I've worked. And so I said, well, John, when a manager wants to protest, it's what are you protesting? I have to know exactly what you're protesting. And John looks at me and goes, I'm protesting all of it. All of it. I just protest all of it.
I strenuously object.
I said, well, John, that's all well and good, but what exactly? He said, well, you guys screwed it up, and you called time, and I protest the whole damn thing. Now he said, all right, but again, once a protest is lodged, now I've got to go back to the headsets and check to make sure that we are absolutely right with the ruling and with everything we did, because you never want to lose a protest. And so then once, I kind of knew the answer, but again, that's protocol. That's what we do, and that's what caused more delay in this inning. And then finally, I went to John. I said, the protest is lodged and everything. It was so funny though, because there were a couple different times especially toward the end, and this is the part here where he had protested, so I went back to make sure we got all that situated. But I said, John, we got to move on. I mean, it's time to move on now. This is what we're doing. And he goes, and that's when I asked him again. I said, John, do you want to get ejected or not? Because we're going now. And he's, no, I don't want to get ejected. I said, okay, all right, let's go. This is it. We'll move on.
All right, and we are going to move on, but not before we thank former MLB umpire Dale Scott. Terrific insight. You're wonderful to call in and be a part of our Blue Jays Rewind Watch Party. Dale Scott, we wish you good fortune, and thank you for everything, the insight, the information, the knowledge, and thanks for hanging out with us.
And just one quick thing, I had this series in Texas the next year when they had the big brawl. I was at first base, so I got to see all of that. So that just kind of ties it up. And then I finished the season, my last game, or I finished my career, the last game in Toronto. I love Toronto. Thank you so much for the invite. It's one of my favorite cities.
Thank you, Dale. And stop walking under ladders, for goodness sakes. We appreciate it.
Dale, thanks, man. That was awesome.
Thanks, Dale.
All right, we want to re-welcome everybody. If you're just joining us to Blue Jays Rewind Watch Party, it is Game 5 of the 2015 American League Division Series. Thank you for following us on Sportsnet's Facebook page, YouTube channel, Sportsnet 1 and Sportsnet.ca. Well, the time has come. The man of the hour, the reason why this game is called the Bat Flip Game. Ladies and gentlemen, it is our extreme pleasure to welcome in the one, the only, I'm going to call him the King, Mr. Jose Bautista. Jose, thank you. This would not be a watch party without the man who hit one of the most memorable home runs in this organization's history. First of all, how many times have you sat and watched this game, this inning, this series? How many times do you kind of walk down memory lane and watch what you've done in this series?
Well, before I answer, thanks for having me, and I hope that everybody's that's watching is at home and staying safe. So, I'm happy to join, and I appreciate the opportunity. I've watched it quite a few times, to be quite honest with you. Whether it's because I want to, or people force me to, or come across it, it just seems to happen every so often. But I've seen my fair share of the replay of at least this inning in this game.
And before
I'm sure
my
you really have to
jump
get your
in,
arm twisted. Sorry, Hazel.
to show it. That's okay. To show it. When you watch it, Jose, do you find yourselves noticing things that maybe you didn't notice because you were right in the heat of the moment, whether it be the atmosphere or the particular play or some of your teammates' reactions? Do you find yourself seeing things for the first time, really, all these years later?
Yeah, 100%. And the most fun part for me is watching all the reactions from all the guys. That's pretty cool. And the faces and the fans, and just seeing what everybody was doing around their seats and stuff. All that stuff is extremely interesting to me, and I guess to all players, because from our point of view and in the moment, we can't pay attention, and we're really not. So that's we get to enjoy that if we rewatch games.
Jose, so much happens so fast in these games. When did you get a minute to actually let things sink in of everything that happened? All of the chaos from the seventh inning, from the ball going off Chu's bat to your home run to the beer cans flying from the stands. When did you get a minute to be like, this happened? This really happened?
At home. Right before I went to bed. Just when I got home is when I really got a chance to kind of decompress and just kind of let it all sink in. Even the ride home, which, by the way, David Price had gifted us all like some of those electric scooters that year, right. And I ended up taking mine back home that night. Even the ride home, the fans were still out on the streets celebrating and having fun. So even that ride home was a little bit intense, trying to get around people to get home. So, but when I got home is when I really got to decompress and let it all sink in and kind of enjoy it from a more calm state of mind, I guess.
Jose, we're back to the action here of the game after everything got sorted out. But as the Martin play happened, the ball off the Chew's bat, you're in right field. Like, what is going through your mind? Did you know the rule? How are you computing that moment?
I didn't know the rule, and quite frankly, I was surprised that the rule is what the rule is. And at the moment, I still didn't know, so I was, kind of upset and not really understanding what was happening. So, not that we felt, or I felt that we were being cheated, but I was amazed that that was the end result, that was what the rule was. So, disappointed a little bit, but then also, that kind of gives more urgency to the game and the situation that we were put in after that.
I remember talking to R.A. Dickey after the game, and he was saying his reaction was like, this series cannot be decided on a play like that. Did you have some sort of feeling along those lines?
100%. And I mean, that series was tight to begin with. We lost the first two at home. I think the second game was on an extra innings. And the first two games, even though we lost, were pretty close. Then we came back and won another close one. We kind of had a bigger cushion in the fourth game. But after being down two, because we lost both at home and then winning two on the road, and then this happening in the middle of, the decisive game of the series, yeah, it was pretty nerve-wracking. So I share those feelings that RA had.
Jose, before Arash jumps in here, we've got a question from John on YouTube. He says, Jose, what was going through your mind right before hitting the home run? So we thank John for his question. Jose?
Oh, I just, in the moment, just try to be in the at-bat. Fortunately for me, the pitcher that was on the mound, Sam Dyson, he was a guy that liked to use one or two pitches at the most. But if you looked at his splits, he was like over 85% with a sinker, which was very effective. I'm not saying that it was easy to hit against a guy like that, but it made me worry less about how many choices he had. So just, try to pick up the ball out of his hand, make sure it was high enough and over the plate enough to where it didn't sink in too low and inside for me. Because I had faced him 3 or 4 times earlier that year, maybe not that many, but at least 2 or 3, where I ended up grounding to the shortstop with similar pitches. And that was his calling card all season long. He kept getting guys to roll over the ball to the left side of the infield all year long. He had a great season, and that's just what my mindset was right before the pitch, was just trying to get him to race that fastball a little bit more and leave it over the plate. I mean, in the first pitch in the at-bat, he threw me one just like the ones that I had hit as a ground ball to the left side earlier in the year, and I ended up fouling it off. I almost hit it off my foot, but I was thankful that I didn't, because that one would have hurt.
Jose, the sequence that we're about to watch still remains surreal. Even before you got to the plate, the error by Texas in a building that had so much tension, that had so much hostility, in a winner-go-home game, in a one-run game. What is the anticipation like, knowing your number may very well be called and all of this is starting to unfold?
Well, even though I was, 5 or 6 batters away, it kind of unfolded quickly in our minds, not necessarily in real time. But a play like this, you expect it to be an out. So immediately that would have popped up into your head after the ball is hit, and then you see the error. Things get prolonged, but you just try to be ready for the moment, and just stay in the game, pay attention to the situations, and make sure you're within the context of what's happening, so you don't miss anything.
Jose, before all of us take a look at your at-bat, a quick question from Teresa on YouTube. Teresa asks, Jose, where is the bat? Do you have it?
There it is.
There it is, Teresa. Good question,
Teresa.
It's
back in my possession now. No, I had let the Jays use it for, since the game happened. I let the Jays kind of borrow it and show it around and display it for fans. And just before this spring training, they brought it back down to me. So there it is. It's right behind me.
A couple of Silver Slugger awards back there too, Jose.
Yeah, that's all the hardware right there. A lot of the All-Star stuff. Silver Sluggers, Hank Aaron. It's all there. That's a painting that Vernon Wells' dad did for me.
Sure.
Wow.
After I hit 54, it's pretty cool.
Did you think after this game, man, did you think that this team was kind of on a collision with destiny, that 2015 was going to be the year?
No. I was so immersed in the moment that I wasn't thinking ahead at all. We were just locked in and trying to make it happen. It did feel good, especially after coming back from a series like this. Going into Kansas City was a pretty good feeling. It ended up not working out, but it was a good feeling. We were pretty confident, but we got beat by a better team.
Jose, when you go into an inning coming off the top half, and there's a lot of emotion in this game already, what kind of management of emotions do you have to do in the following inning to ensure that you can execute your plan, even though you've got adrenaline coursing through you and all those different elements at play?
See, I'm a pretty intense guy when I'm on the diamond, so I don't manage my emotions the best out of all the guys that are on the field. What I try to stay is physically ready, so I might do some breathing, conscious breathing stuff, just so I don't get too amped up physically. But mentally, I just kind of let my mind go. I don't try to coach myself mentally too much. I try to be like in the flow of things and not force my train of thought to go in one direction or another.
Jose, we're a few minutes away from your big at-bat. Josh from Facebook wants to know, Jose, do you miss the Toronto culture, the game atmosphere, and the fans? Thank you, Josh, for your question.
Of course I do. All of it. I mean, playing for 10 years in Toronto, Toronto's like my second home, so I miss all of it, and I wish I was still there.
Did the 3 errors kind of catch you by surprise? We're looking at a replay of you right now.
Yeah.
You've got safe. You got
There's
your
that intensity.
Yeah, there it is. Did the 3 errors, one after the other, did that kind of give you a feeling that, hey, maybe something special is happening and we've got maybe a door opening for us? I know Jeff Bannister said that the one thing following this 7th inning was that his guys, they couldn't keep their heartbeats down and things just kind of went off the rails. For you, watching from the on-deck circle and in that dugout, watching error after error after error, what's going through your mind?
Hey, in games like this, in any big league game, to be quite honest, and in one that's a decisive game in a playoff series, 1 extra out can cost you the game, let alone 3 in 1 inning. So, yeah, as each one of those was happening, our confidence level, our energy, the momentum felt like it was all creeping to our side. So 100%, it was helping us. It was, I don't know, just giving us a leg up in that moment. Even though we're down in the game, after the 3rd error, it felt like with this situation, bases loaded, no outs, they were back against the corner and not us.
The wheel play, the 3rd error is coming up here, and it's going to go. I mean, the guys on the field who on that Texas side, you got Andrus at shortstop, Adrian Beltre, one of the all-time great third basemen, Mitch Moreland over at first. I mean, this is a good defensive squad, and here comes Dalton Pompey in to put more pressure on the defense with his speed, but. As these guys are doing it, do you get the sense that maybe they're vulnerable, that that they might be imploding a little bit?
Maybe that they were a little bit tight in the moment, or they were being affected a little bit by the crowd, the situation, how loud everything was, and the build-up that was happening throughout the series that was obviously culminating in this inning. Yeah, I think it affected them a little bit. I think the turf came into play on both the first 2 errors for sure. On the 3rd one, obviously, it didn't because it was just a throw that was dropped. And this one maybe is where I think, and I can't speak for him, but it just seems to me like he was a little nervous, or ALDS was, and when he dropped that ball, which he's a great defensive player and has been for his whole career, so it was odd to see him drop that ball, but hey, we wanted to win the game, so we'll take it.
Did you ever talk to him about that, Jose?
I haven't got a chance to kind of pick his brain or ask him that question, but I'd be interested to see what was going through his mind.
This is wild, isn't it? 3 of them.
It's crazy. I mean, that sort of stuff doesn't happen in a big league game, let alone in 3 back-to-back plays, and in a playoff, such an important game. It doesn't happen. So we witnessed some crazy stuff that night.
The rivalry with Texas, before 2016, before what happened in Arlington the following spring, who was enemy number 1 for you? Who was the guy? Was it Sam Dyson or was it somebody else?
No, I think at this moment in this series, I don't think there was a huge rivalry. You know, maybe 2 intense teams that were pretty good and trying to dominate the American League at the same time, but I didn't think there was anything more than that at this point in time. I didn't really have any enemies on that team before this, I guess.
You didn't feel it building over the 5 games? Because, I mean, each game got progressively more intense, it felt like, at least from the outside.
Yeah, 100%. But, you know, up to that moment and through that series, before anything else that happened afterwards, it was just, I would have just kind of looked at it in a way as just 2 intense teams trying to win a series. You know, no more than that.
Jose Norman from Facebook has a question for you. Norman asks, have you since connected with any of the Texas players since that game? You have any relationships with any of them? Similarly to what we had asked you earlier.
I've kind of come in touch with Adrian Beltre a few times, but none of those guys, for whatever reason, I never, before or after, had developed any intense relationships with. I might have run into Andrews at the World Baseball Classic too, just, you know, passing by or saying hi, something like that. Mitch Moreland a little bit when he went to Boston after that, but nothing that developed into an intense relationship or a serious one with any of those guys. And I guess it's just coincidence.
We are moments away from your at-bat. The crowd, Jose, it just seemed like there were on every pitch, every inning, every swing. Was that palpable? Could you guys feel that throughout the entire game, much less in the 7th inning?
Yeah, but we were used to it. We were spoiled for that whole season, especially after, you know, the trade deadline, and we got David Price and a few others. You know, it's the intensity and of the fans that were coming to our games just kept rising as we got to the playoffs. And again, it almost seemed to peak at this moment, but we were used to it and we loved it. I mean, when you're a player and you're playing in front of that type of fan, or fan base in general, on a daily basis, it's truly a luxury, and we got to enjoy that, and that really fuels you energy-wise. Those moments where you might be, you know, wanting to put your hand down between your shoulders and let it hang because you're tired and exhausted, those moments never show up when the fan base is so energized like that. So it definitely helped us for the majority of that season.
Jose, that season, the Tulowitzki trade happens, the team is 50-51, and then, you know, David Price the next day, and Revere, Mark Lowe comes in, so is LaTroy Hawkins. You'd been around a couple of years prior when they made all those deals in the off season, bringing in Burley and Josh Johnson, Jose Reyes. People thought that maybe in 2013 was going to be the year. When along the way in 15, when that summer, did you really get the sense that this team could be a legit World Series contender?
That's hard to say specifically on the World Series part, but we felt pretty good coming out of spring training, and we just, you know, I think we didn't get off to the best start, but then we just kind of caught fire a few months into the season, and getting that boost at the deadline, like you mentioned, was just, when you're riding high with confidence already and playing good, and you get that injection of talent, it just takes you to another level. And right around that deadline is when we felt pretty freaking good about making the playoffs.
Jose, you touched on Dyson, being able to lock in on the sinker, but he was, as you mentioned, just a ground ball machine that year, and a really tough guy to elevate. When a guy's throwing a power sinker like that, what are you doing to your swing to try and ensure you can elevate the ball? You're not just going to roll over it and hit a 6-3.
Well, fortunately for me, that played into my strength. I like the ball inside, and I don't mind guys that throw sinkers. For the way that my swing works, you just kind of I had to catch the ball out in front a little bit more. If you kind of let it get too deep, it's when those, and especially Dyson's ball is pretty heavy, and I don't know if most fans would understand that, but sometimes when you face a pitcher and you hit the ball that's thrown, it feels like, I don't know, you're hitting a tennis ball or a rubber ball, even though our balls are much harder than that. But when you hit a ball like Dyson, it feels like you're hitting a ball made out of metal. I can't really explain to you the reasons why or the physics behind it, but his ball seems to be picking up speed as it's getting to you. So, like just happened to Josh right there, he let it get in too deep. Not that he was trying to, but it just happened. So I try to focus when I face guys like that on hitting the ball out in front a little more, not necessarily to lift it or getting in the air, just to make solid contact, because I feel like when I let it get in too deep, it just kind of ties your hands up, and the ball's picking up so much speed that the depth perception kind of plays against you a little bit on the last 10-15 feet of the trajectory of the ball coming into the plate.
Well, let's focus now on the Blue Jays Rewind Watch Party. It's the bat flip game, Game 5 of the 2015 American League Division Series. Let's all watch together with our special guest, Mr. Jose Bautista.
He's thinking I'm doubled off. That's why he's going back, because that's a ball you think he's going to catch.
Boy, what next?
What an inning. We are tied at 3. Dyson 2, Bautista.
Are we tied? Oh, my goodness. Oh, what a game, huh?
What an inning. The 7th inning to this point has taken 40 minutes.
Incredible.
Runners on the corners, 2 outs.
If you look at the Rangers, they've had 5 outs in this inning already. Got the one at the plate, got the one at second. They've had 6 basically. They kicked 3.
And the scoreboard only says 2.
Donaldson driving in the tying run on a fielder's choice. After the Rangers took the lead in bizarre fashion in the top half. The 1-1 from Dyson. Bautista with a drive. Deep left field. No doubt about it.
That's crazy.
Oh my God. So what's going through your mind? I know you've probably watched that a million times, so it's
Yeah, your guess is as good as mine. I mean, my mind, and I heard people say this plenty of times after this happened, that they all blacked out, nobody remembers what happened for like the next 5 minutes, and I'm one of those guys too. I have no clue what was going through my mind. As soon as I made contact, it's like everything just became a blur. So I was definitely enjoying it, though. I was fully immersed in the moment. My brain, nothing was going through my brain other than just paying attention to what was happening. So I wasn't trying to hit the record button at all. You know, I was just enjoying the moment and seeing the guy's reaction, and again, just, you know, I couldn't believe it that happened, and that we just went ahead in the game and we were moving on. So I was completely engulfed in that.
And then this happens.
Yeah, this was just a lot of confusion because, you know, obviously Edwin was trying to calm the crowd down. We couldn't understand what was happening, and people were yelling at each other. Then, you know, people talk in the dugout, and they're like, he's yelling at you, and it's, I don't know, just stuff that happens in the moment, I guess, in sports, and it's, but, yeah, I tried to get out of there. The guys were just telling me to go back to the dugout. Obviously trying to stay in the game and focus on finishing up the game.
That moment flipping the bat, Jose, is there a way to just articulate the energy or whatever is going through you after you know in that scene, in that moment, in that clutch time, what you did?
I really wish there was. I mean, I don't remember. I don't remember flipping the bat. I don't remember, you know, anything that happened. Up until when I got to the dugout and I shook the last guy's hand down the tunnel, you know, I don't remember. So I just remember feeling good about what happened and the satisfaction of putting us ahead in the game.
Some coaches and go ahead, Hayes.
Just a quick question from Rick from YouTube. He's asking you, Jose, does it still give you chills watching that home run? And have you ever heard that stadium louder than that bottom of the seventh?
No, never heard of that loud, and it definitely still gives me chills. One of those moments that you'll never forget. As an athlete, you're fortunate enough just to be in those situations, let alone come through and do something positive for your team. So, yeah, I still get the chills. What I enjoy the most, though, is like that guy that was right there, pounding his chest. Is just watching everybody else enjoy it, you know. Because I get to do that when I'm watching other sports. But when I see our fans doing it because of something that we did as a team or something that I did in particular, it's pretty cool.
Jose, some sports psychologists and coaches and administrators say there's no such thing as clutch. Their contention is that every shot, if you're a basketball player, every kick, if you're an NFL kicker, every at bat as a baseball player, they're all the same. There's no such thing. Do you subscribe to that? Because it seems the bigger the moment, I mean, the heart rate may be a lot different than it is in the 7th inning, 8th inning, 9th inning that it would be the first.
Yeah, maybe there's some more context to that statement, and I don't want to necessarily say that I completely disagree, but my first reaction to that comment is that I don't agree. So
yeah.
Maybe I'm missing something, or it was I don't know, a trick statement, but I don't see how, as an athlete and experiencing what I've experienced through my career, you can say something like that. You know, different moments, just like you said, the crowd, the situation of the game, you know, how you feel, you know, what the outcomes could be. It makes you feel different as an athlete, and your heart does tick faster in some plays more than others. So, I don't want to discredit those who said that, but I just don't know if I completely agree.
Jose,
look at this.
You know, with some hindsight, and we're 5 years on from it, you know, so much of what happened after the homer with the branches clearing twice, it was the emotion, some frustration on their side over a bat flip. And you know, you wrote a tremendous piece in the Players Tribune not long after this series about, you know, just expressing yourselves and players being allowed to express yourself. And the game has changed a lot. But with the gift of hindsight, do you feel some of the controversy that followed that moment of celebration for you? Did that hurt a little, take away from the moment a little bit, hurt your enjoyment? And, do you feel like the game has changed where this is allowable now?
No, I try not to focus on it. And I just think it happens from time to time where the sports evolved into, some things that might be frowned upon in one period are okay and acceptable in another. And I think that's just what happened with baseball. I think, especially with bat flips in the last 5 years. And I think the more that the fans enjoy and the game and watching us play and us celebrate when we do something good, I think it just creates better engagement, and I think it's something good for the sport.
We're with Jose Bautista here on Blue Jays Rewind Watch Party. It is Game 5 of the ALDS 2015. A question for you, Jose. Dave from Facebook is asking, Jose, what did Gibby say to you either after the home run or after the ball game? Thank you, Dave, for your question.
I don't remember him saying anything in particular right after the home run. Like I said, I don't remember much for the 5 minutes or so post home run, but I'm sure he shook my hand or gave me a high five or something. And but I don't really recall him pulling me into the office or going out of his way to make any particular comment about it after the game or anything like that. Gibby's one of those guys that he likes to turn the page pretty quickly, and he might have mentioned something. I do remember he made a comment, I think either the following year in spring training or something, and it was probably some like funny, snarky comment, just like he usually likes to go about it.
Jose, I was listening to an interview Ryan Goins had on Sportsnet 590 The Fan this week. He just said we had such a swagger, that 2015 team. He said we played with such a supreme confidence. Have you ever been on a team that just knew it could win the way this team could win in the fashion in which it did so often those last 2.5 months of the year?
No, I think this team had that special it that most teams look for. And it's swagger, it's confidence, but at the same time, it's just, great camaraderie. I think everybody that was coming into that ball club and that clubhouse every single day was just really pulling for each other and trying to get along, and just knew that there was a bigger goal in mind. And we just kind of enjoyed every minute of it. From the time we showed up at the ballpark at 2 o'clock or whatever time might have been, we were going to the cage, talking baseball, same thing in the video room, then in the hot tubs or cold tanks, in the weight room, at the hotels after games, on the bus. Everybody just kind of enjoyed each other, and it was just a fun season. It went by super fast. It truly does happen that when you're having fun, time flies, and we just really got along with each other pretty good on that team that season. It was a group that enjoyed being around each other.
Jose, just jump into the present a little bit, and we've heard some talk that you had been doing some pitching, and you had some thoughts about representing the Dominican Republic in the Olympic qualifying tournament as a two-way player. What are you up to right now? What were you up to when we could still play baseball? What were you up to? What are your goals right now?
I don't really have any immediate goals that I've kind of set when it comes to continue to play or anything like that. I would love to. I don't know if it will happen or not. I'm just kind of trying to enjoy my life, enjoy my daughters, and deal with the situation that's going on right now. But I'm still training. I'm still staying in shape. And one of the goals that I had prior to the virus situation was to play for the Dominican team to try to go to the Tokyo Olympics. Not necessarily as a two-way player. If they would have given me a chance to pitch, I would have taken it. But more as what I normally do, playing in the outfield. It's something that I've done since I was little, was pitch, all through my little league career, high school career, and even in college a little bit. I closed for my junior college team for the 2 seasons that I was there, and started even a few games in my sophomore year. And anybody that's played with me at any level in professional baseball knows that I'm always, instead of warming up like a normal position player, I'm throwing like a pitcher, and it's just been something that I've always been obsessed with. So, now that in the off season, Marcus lives in Tampa, Marcus Stroman, he needed a throwing partner, and I was happy to volunteer, and we just kind of play catch with each other. He gives me some tips, and I normally like improving any skill that I might have, whether it's playing golf or playing baseball, and it's been pretty fun to try to throw to catchers, something that I haven't done in a long time. And I'm not doing it for any particular reason specifically, but I'm ready just in case. You never know.
Back in the day at Chipola College, you used to be up in the 90s when you were closing out games. What are you featuring on the mound these days?
I think only one of the days that we were throwing, somebody had a radar gun around, and I think I hit 89 and 90 consistently. So, but who knows? Who knows consistently what I could do? I don't know. Pitching is pretty hard. Your arm has to be in extremely good shape. I'm not gonna sit here and try to tell anybody, let alone myself, that I'm ready to go through a major league season as a pitcher. That's a pretty tough task, but you never know. We'll see what happens. Like I said, I wasn't really necessarily going through what I was going through in order to go pitch for a big league team. It's a pretty tough task to do, but we'll see what happens with the Olympic qualifier, and maybe even the WBC. My dad's a Spanish citizen, and if I don't fit into the Team Dominican plans for the WBC, Team Spain is also a possibility. So we'll see what happens.
Jose, you mentioned throwing with Stroman and how close that 2015 team was. Look, the reality is the professional baseball business. Guys come and go. Everyone goes their separate ways. I'm just wondering how many of these guys from 5 years ago you're still in touch with?
Edwin. Reyes was on that team before he got traded for Tulo. I talk to Tulo every now and then. I talk to Goings every now and then. Talk to Colabello every now and then. Most guys on that team, like you said, Stroman, Aaron Sanchez also is local to Tampa. Donaldson is as well. The majority of those guys on that team, even Dioner Navarro, I keep in touch with.
It's funny, we were in L.A. last year with the Blue Jays, and Russ said, I can still remember almost every detail of that seventh inning. And a few weeks later, we're in Atlanta, and Donaldson said the same. Is there something that kind of bonds you guys when you go through something like this together?
Yeah, I believe so. I can't compare it to anything else like that's more, that deserves to be in a different category. But anytime you go through an experience like this as a group, and it's a successful one, and it was a stressful one, and it's as long as a baseball season is, and it culminates in something like a series this intense, that's going to bond guys together for sure.
And along with Joe Carter, as we see there, your 6 home runs, now tied for the lead in Blue Jays postseason history. These milestones, these benchmarks, these records, what does that mean to you? Do you pay attention to a lot of these records that you're either approaching or have eclipsed, Jose?
No, I haven't really looked back at a lot of them, and I don't even know which ones there are. I didn't even know about this. But, those things are cool to look at and enjoy. Maybe I'll take some time at some point to kind of look back at some of those records and milestones. And I'm sure I'll find time to truly enjoy them, but I haven't really paid attention much to that at this point in my life. But it's pretty cool to see. And just being on a group with those other 3 fine gentlemen and great baseball players, like I am in this list in particular right here, it's a pretty cool feeling.
Jose, since we're reflecting a little bit on your time and your accomplishments with the Blue Jays, if you think about where you were in your career when you arrived, somebody who's struggling to get a regular opportunity and establish himself in the major leagues, and then what you were able to accomplish here over the following decade. What lessons do you think there are for player development people in your story, in someone who has ability and clicks? You hear so often in the game people say a guy is who he is when he's in his late 20s. He's not going to really change. But you were certainly the exception to that, and if it could happen to you, why not someone else? What do you think are the lessons player development people should take from your story?
I don't know. That's a tough one, and I don't know if I'm in a position to be giving people lessons or pointing them out. I think, I don't know. I think it's things have to come together sometimes for athletes, whether it's the right opportunity, the right coaching, and they get put in the right situation, and everything comes together. Confidence, trust, and I don't know. Things just kind of flow from time to time, and people just kind of take the bull by the horns and make the most of situations. And for me, it was in Toronto, and I was happy to enjoy that resurrection to my career over there.
Jose, how closely do you watch the present-day Blue Jays, and how often are you, watching baseball in general?
I watch enough. And I pay attention enough. Baseball, it's in my blood. Baseball is what I do, and I'm a fan as much as I am a player. So I pay attention to every team, but especially the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays will always hold that place in my heart.
Is there a
what's
young
next?
Player
What's next? Oh, sorry, Hayes.
That's okay. Is there a young player that impresses you these days? Not necessarily with the Blue Jays, but in general, who impresses you out there?
Fernando Tatis Jr. is an unbelievably talented athlete, and I'm excited to see what he's going to be able to do in the future with his career. Seems like he doesn't have a ceiling right now, so I'm excited to watch him through the years.
Beyond baseball, Jose, and who knows what's going to happen with the Olympics and the WBCs, just in terms of the events getting off over the next year or two. What's next for you, man? What do you want to do when you grow up?
I wish I had that answer. I'd be doing it right now. No, I'm going to take it slow. Again, after playing baseball professionally for so long, close to 20 years, and when it's all said and done, it's you got to enjoy your time at home and enjoy time with family, and I think things will fall into place at the right time. So I'm not going to try to rush into anything.
All right, before we go, Jose, can we get one last look at the bat, at the center of this game? Can we just get one more peek? Look at that. There it is.
There it is.
Behold. There it is. Jose Bautista.
Hopefully a lot of the fans have already seen this bad boy in display with the Blue Jays.
That's right, at Rogers Center. I've got the gloves there. Did you take anything else from that series, Jose?
I've taken so many things over the years that I don't know. I have a nice storage unit that at some point I need to go through and start doing something with all that stuff. Yeah, I was one of those guys that even my old batting gloves, even if they were ripped up, I never threw them in the garbage. If I didn't give stuff away at the end of the year to, minor league players or little league players that were in need or asking for stuff, I was putting everything away. So I have a nice bounty of stuff that I need to go through at some point.
What's your favorite one that you got back there?
You just saw it.
Yeah, it's the bat?
Usually game used stuff. For some reason, it's more. It's easier to get more excited about. They all have a story. I normally, I used to get it authenticated, so they put these little stickers on them, and then you go on this website and it tells you exactly when you used it and what you did or the reason why it's got that sticker on it, so you can go back and kind of put yourself in that moment. So game use memorabilia is something that I'm a big fan of.
Jose Bautista, we cannot thank you enough for the time, for the insight. Like I said in the beginning, we can't have a watch party without the guy who is at the center of Game 5 of this 2015 American League Division Series. Please don't be a stranger. Thank you so much. I know Blue Jays fans really appreciate and loving seeing you and hearing from you and in catching up with you. Thank you for joining us on Blue Jays Rewind Watch Party.
No, thank you guys so much.
All right. Jose
Appreciate the
Bautista.
opportunity. Take it easy.
Thanks.
Be
You too,
safe,
Jose.
be healthy. Thanks, Jose.
All right, thank you. Stay safe.
Now, how cool is that? that I don't know about you
That's
guys.
a real
but
trip
I
down
just
memory lane.
watched, like I just watched his little box there throughout that whole sequence in the bottom of the 7th, and you did see him, smile, watching that. That's got to be like the coolest thing to do is get inside the mind of someone that was so central to what happened in that game.
It's amazing, guys. He hits the home run, and even 5 years later, he says, "I went blank, I went black, and I still don't remember what happened." Like when you go into that moment, just imagine what that must be like. Just that rush and that energy and everything that goes with it. And I love that he said, it still gives me chills watching it, and he's probably watched it a few hundred times.
So,
Yeah, for
Arash,
sure. And
where
when
were
you're-
you?
when you're
Oh,
an
sorry. Go
athlete-
ahead, Shai.
Oh, sorry, Ace. That when you're an athlete, there are times where you know that you've done something really special, and you know that you've done something that's going to endure, right? And in that moment, he knew, everybody understood, like this was something significant, and those opportunities are so rare, and that's why they get celebrated the way they do. But to be able to be the author of one of those moments, like Jose made a great point, it's hard enough just to get to the major leagues, and then it's even harder to get to the postseason. And then for everything to line up to come up in that spot and deliver in a moment like that, you'd understand why. It gives him chills, it gives everyone who was there chills, and I think the enduring feeling of happiness that moment just created for so many people is why it's such a lasting memory.
And when you think about his history, he comes up with the Orioles in 2004, gets sent to the Tampa Bay Devil Rays, went from one bad team to another bad team, then went to that Royals team in that same season. They were terrible before he made it to Pittsburgh, and this is his first postseason series. And the guy's been through a ringer, and he's just kind of grinded it out. Bad team after bad team after bad team. He gets to Pittsburgh. Alex Anthopoulos notices him, brings him, and as you mentioned, Shai, just has this rebirth. So you got to think that during that postseason, it's a culmination of that hard work and the trials and tribulations that he had gone through earlier in his career before he finally, quote unquote, made it. And when he hit that home run, I imagine it's this kind of release, this kind of like all this hard work and all this perseverance has finally, come to light. That's where I thought about his earlier teams that he was on. And just thinking that 7th inning just, kind of was an affirmation that he had it in him and he was a good player all along. All right, we are.
And Bautista just wanted to win here so badly. He'd always talked about that over the years. Remember a couple of years prior at the trade deadline when the team didn't do anything, he thought they were good enough to go for it. In Houston, he called out management at the time about it. And then when the opportunity came to stay in the moment, to deliver in that moment, in as big a moment as the franchise had in 22 years, that's something right there.
And he mentioned that he wanted it, and you see that sometimes with those players who had great careers but they can't get to the postseason, and when they finally get to that stage, some of them can shrink back And, baseball playoffs, a DS, I mean, it could be as little as 3 games. It could be up to 5 games. It's a really small sample, and the teams had a ton of time to scout you. They know your weaknesses. They know how to attack you. They're going to game plan, especially someone of Jose Bautista's stature. It's tough to deliver that and to be able to step up in that kind of a moment. And, it's not remembered in the same way, but his performance Game 6 against the Kansas City Royals with a couple home runs there, that's another one that's really a classic one on his legend.
So, Arash, where were you when the bat flip took place? And kind of describe the environment, the atmosphere where you were.
Well, I was in the football press box at Rogers Center, which is down the third baseline. And I always tell people who say, I saw the bat flip live, there's 500,000 people who claim they were in Rogers Center that night. Or that afternoon, I should say. And I say BS every time when they say I saw the bat flip live, because nobody saw the bat flip happen. Everyone's watching the ball go out of the yard, go over the and just pandemonium broke out. And I still remember I had the laptop in front of me. I was sitting next to Brunt, and Brunt kind of gave me a little elbow, and my laptop was shaking and moving. It almost felt like we were in a bit of an earthquake. But the other thing was the game went forever, guys. I mean, that 7th inning was almost an hour. And I didn't get home till about midnight because, Hayes, I remember after the game you were doing locker room interviews, and I was on the field with Buck and Brunt, and then doing a wrap-up piece. So I got home around midnight. I'm like, okay, yeah, makes sense. Except it was a 4 o'clock start, not a 7 o'clock start. It was one of the longest, most draining afternoons. There was so much emotion. There was so much drama. There was so much tension. And the one thing that I really remember from this was when the ball went off Chu's bat and people started throwing beer cans and that eruption happened. A friend of mine texted me, and he said his wife is a police officer, and he said that the riot police are going to Rogers Center just to be on the safe side of things. And remember, this is 4 years after Vancouver and what happened after the Canucks lost the Stanley Cup. And I thought to myself, oh man, this can't happen this way. And then Bautista did his thing, and always forgotten, always forgiven.
What about you,
Everyone
Shai?
went home happy. Yeah, I was in the baseball press box, and it's funny. I was sitting beside Arden Zwelling, our Sportsnet colleague, and we were still unpacking the exact description of the rule from the top half when the bottom half was unfolding. We had just gotten the official word from someone with MLB about what exactly that rule was, and we were working through that. And then this inning starts unfolding, and then Bautista hits the home run, and it was just, for me, it was like, all right, I gotta start a whole new story right now. Off we went and did it, and yeah, the stadium literally shook. It was pretty wild, and we went from, I can think of only one other time I've been at a stadium, and it wasn't on the same scale, where I felt like this could get really ugly really fast, and that was the 2013 World Baseball Classic when Canada got into the brawl with Mexico, and it was about 18. I think there were 18,000 fans. About 17,000 of them were pro-Mexican, and the brawl spilled into the stands with a few Canadian players. And I thought this has got a chance to get real bad. And the only other time I really felt that was game 5 before Bautista hit the home run. And so, I mean, he rescued a lot of good that day, I think, and he made a major difference in a number of ways.
It's funny, Texas still had a chance to tie it up in the 8th. Josh Hamilton had the opportunity there, and then the punch out to wrap up the inning. Elvis Andrus, a day that he'd love to have back. I remember talking to Elvis last year. We were in Texas. I asked him about all of this and the rivalry, and he just said, I miss it. He said, I miss being in the playoffs. I miss those days. I miss the temperature of it all. And Eric Hosmer, now with San Diego, then with Kansas City, he said, we were in the house when David Price arrived, And the whole building went crazy. And he said, in that dugout, we looked at one another and we said to each other, this is the team we got to get through if we're going to make the World Series. And sure enough, they did. A guy who always calls the World Series for ESPN Radio and called the Bautista bat flip. He's no stranger to Sportsnet. And I am happy to see there is no green and no gold anywhere in the... Oh, God, there it is.
How's that?
Come on, Shulman, it's a global pandemic. Give us some strength.
Perfectly.
It was actually shy. It's usually way up there. I will admit I moved it down there. But look at look at over Arash's left shoulder. He started.
Yeah.
Yes.
Shoulder,
Well, I mean, it would have been better if you came on wearing a Brett Favre jersey. I think that would have been perfect.
I thought about it. I've actually got a little. I've got. You don't want to know what I've got. So we'll call a truce right now, Arash. How's that?
Dan, yes, sounds good. Dan, I love the conversation with Dale Scott. I know you were listening. I thought it was such great insight because we never get to hear what goes on in those conversations when the umps get together, when the umps and the managers speak. I thought of all the stuff we heard, and Jose was great, obviously. We'll get to that. But I learned a lot from Dale Scott tonight.
Yeah, I did too. Let me say a couple of things before I answer that. It's great to see all of you guys, first of all, and I hope everybody's staying safe and their families are good. This is also the latest I've stayed up since I've gone into isolation by like an hour and a half. And I want to thank you. You know, you get the coolest kid in town to come to the party in Jose Bautista. He leaves, and then you bring me in, and that sound of the air coming out of the balloon. Like, what happened to the party? So, but I'm happy to be here with you guys. But yeah, it was fascinating, Arash, to listen to Dale Scott. And I thought, you obviously saw the tweet, I guess, if you're leading with that. I thought he was terrific. I mean, he was open. He wasn't defensive at all. And he said, I'd never seen that play before. You know, Harold Reynolds had seen it down in the minor leagues back in the 80s. Dale Scott had never had it. As you mentioned, I was calling the game for ESPN Radio. I had never seen that play before in a game. And I will freely admit, I was straddling the fence and being as non-committal as I could in the moment because I really didn't know what the right call was. Did Chu reach out over the plate? Was there intent? Was the play dead when Scott called it dead, regardless of whether that was the right call or not? And then, of course, it descended into chaos very quickly. But I get asked a lot, you know, about different moments, different games, and I think the seventh inning of this game is the most emotionally charged event of any kind I have ever been at in my life, and it turned out well for the Blue Jays in the end, but it's certainly one of those games that none of us will ever forget because we were all at it.
I read somewhere
Dan,
Dale
you know,
Scott
you mentioned
said
a little bit about...
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Hayes. You were mentioning a bit about the confusion in that moment with Dale Scott. I was actually the pool reporter who went into the umpire's room after the game and chatted with them and then shared the umpire's quotes with everyone who was covering the game. And I turned it to all the other umpires in the room. Usually only the crew chief talks. And I said, you know, had any of you guys ever seen it? And two of them actually had experienced it in the minors, but the rest of the crew had no idea. I mean, for you, when you're on the air and this is happening, how are you trying to sort through something like that? Because, I mean, you know the stakes, and it's so wild everywhere. What are you doing in that spot?
There are few worse feelings than being live on the air and not knowing what's going on, not knowing what exactly is happening in the moment. It's happened to me more times than, 25 years, no script, doing a lot of games. It's happened. And I've never broken out in a sweat more quickly and more substantially probably than in those 2 or 3 moments where it's like, oh man, what's going on right now? So I don't remember second for second. Rick Sutcliffe was doing the game with me, and I'm quite certain he was a calming influence and a great resource for me. The other thing too, and I watched the inning like everybody here has. When it's on TV, you see the bottles and the umpires and the police officers and the teams. When it's on radio, you've got to describe everything that's going on. And for 10, 15 minutes, there was no baseball. There was just chaos. So when in doubt, say what you see. That's kind of rule number 1 in radio, is when in doubt, say what you see and just describe what's going on. But again, I will admit, for several minutes, I wasn't entirely sure what the right call was, and I wasn't entirely sure what the eventual call would be. And as Dale Scott said, it wasn't pretty, but they got it right. But for a number of reasons, I was really glad, obviously, that the Blue Jays came back and won it. Arash has heard this story, and forgive me if you guys have. Like, my parents and my sons were at the game, and during the 7th inning stretch, I texted all 4 of them, and I said, do not leave the seats after the game. Like, I'm worried there's going to be a riot here. Let me come get you at the seats, and we'll figure this out together. And then after Bautista hit the home run, I texted everybody again, and I said, we're good. I'll see you guys at home later on. I think it's going to be okay now. But so, part of me was like being son and dad at the same time as I was worried about my career crumbling because I didn't know what was going on at that moment.
Were you also fixated, Dan, at the baseball leaving the ballpark? Did you see the bat flip afterwards during the replays?
Yeah, it would have been Hazel during replays, and I agree with Arash. Anybody who says they saw the bat flip, I mean, there couldn't be more than 3 people on this planet who saw the bat flip when it happened, unless, if you were on field level, one of the players, like that ball was clearly gone. There are home runs where you're not too sure if it's going to leave the park or not. That ball was gone. But I watched the ball. I watched the crowd stand up in left field. I watched the celebration. I had no idea about the bat flip until the replays started. And the funny thing was, like, that was the bat flip that was going to end civilization. The world would stop rotating on its axis. Dogs and cats would become friends. And now, less than 5 short years later, bat flips are not only tolerated, they are celebrated right now in most circles. It's kind of crazy.
Let the boys play.
Yeah, let the boys play, right? And go talk to an 18-year-old or a 23-year-old about bat flips, and they'll tell you how they feel. And again, given how emotionally charged it was with the crazy play in the top of the 7th and the bottles being thrown and the delays and the benches clearing and all that, it was the deciding game of a playoff series, for heaven's sake. Like, if you're ever going to toss a bat, toss a bat. I feel a little bit differently about it now than I did in the moment. I was never outraged by it. I was never even opposed to it. I was like, well, there was a lot of emotion going on here. But now, over the past, 4.5 years, like, I think he did absolutely the appropriate thing. And I think we'd all be silly to think a guy like Jose Bautista would do anything but toss. And not only was it a bat flip, I mean, guys, it's like he rehearsed it, and he didn't. But it's like he rehearsed it 1,000 times. It's as good a bat flip. I mean, just the raw motion. It's a, I don't need this bat anymore. I mean, he discards it away with anger, and it was fantastic. It really was. I think not only the most emotionally charged event I've ever been at, I think it's the loudest baseball stadium I've ever been at. And I was there when Joe Carter hit the home run. I think the crowds, and Arash, we talked about this on the radio this morning, the crowds were different, or are different now than they were in 92, 93. And I think the noise when Jose hit that home run is probably the loudest noise I've ever heard in a baseball stadium.
Yeah, I've been to football games where there's 70, 80,000 people. The difference, obviously, with Rogers Center is the roof. I mean, the noise isn't going anywhere, but it was amped. I mean, as the kids say, the joint was jumping that night. And the hostility from the top of the 7th, it was just so heavy. It was so thick.
Yeah, and I think there was an element of Blue Jay fans thinking, why are we playing during the day? The U.S. networks don't want us. If they find a way to get us out, if they're going to get us out of here, so a Canadian team isn't in there. Like, I know people who feel that way, who felt that way and still feel that way. And also, if you go back to, what a great bat flip. And if you go back to 92 and 93, like, the Jays had been good since 83. And they'd been in the playoffs in 85, and they'd been in the playoffs in 89, and they'd been in the playoffs in 91. And as you guys talked about, and as all of you know, like, this fell from the sky, July 28th, 2015, with the 2 trades, with Tulowitzki and Price, and I can't remember, was it 43 and 18? So I think it was 43 and 18 the rest of the season. Like, nobody saw this coming. And again, going back to my kids, like, they hadn't been alive the last time the Blue Jays had been in the playoffs. This was their moment. They finally got to stop hearing about 92 and 93 and have their own moment. And it was just so much emotion from so many people from so many different perspectives. It was really something. The great shot you saw after Bautista homers, there's a shot of Cole Hamels sitting in the dugout. and the camera's bouncing up and down like there's an earthquake going on. I think that's one of the coolest parts.
It was an indoor earthquake.
Yeah, it really was.
You know, part of that too, guys. You know, and I remember talking to a couple baseball officials at the time, and even rival clubs were kind of envious. They said this was a really young fan base too. You know, baseball fans in a lot of cities tend to be a bit on the older side, but this was a very, very young crowd, and I think that added to some of the energy too, right? It's that people who had never experienced this were doing it for the first time. Dan, you said it was their moment, totally that. But it was just a lot of people who were having a lot of fun, and I think when you get that youthful energy into a crowd too, I mean, that really creates the type of dynamic that you saw it play out.
Yeah, younger crowd, less corporate, more diverse, more willing to show emotion. Check on all levels, and also the team. When you have a team with guys like Jose Bautista and Josh Donaldson and Marcus Stroman, and we could go down the list. Like there was a lot of swagger in that clubhouse, and I think some of that kind of bled into the fan base. You know, I think they appreciated, because for Toronto in baseball and basketball, leave hockey out of it, but baseball and basketball until the last few years, it's been our hearts will get broken, something will go wrong. But this crowd, because of the attitudes on this team, I think it just turned into why not us? Like, who says it shouldn't be us? And I think the fan base kind of, echoed the swagger that some of the players on the team had.
You know, it's wild, guys. You know, Dan mentioned basketball. The Raptors win the championship last year. The Blue Jays get to back-to-back American League Championship Series in consecutive years. They have a walk-off home run from Edwin to win the wild card. The Raps lift the Larry O'Brien Trophy, and the two signature moments from the 2 years of the Blue Jays was a second-round home run in the 7th inning by Jose, and it's the Kawhi shot in Game 7 of the second round. We don't really have a lasting image from the Milwaukee series or the Golden State series. It's funny how in the two big moments in Toronto sports in the last 5 years, they've come in the second round for both of those sports and both of those teams.
Yeah, well, and calling the division series the second round is even generous to a certain extent, I guess.
Sure.
The wild card, I understand, but it's those moments. I mean, even if you go back to 1992 and Roberto Alomar's home run, which I maintain is probably the biggest home run in a Blue Jays history. If those moments don't happen, you don't get where you eventually wind up. I think they're all equally important. In the moment, an ALDS or ALCS moment is as big as a World Series moment if you get there. And that team was really good and really special and caught lightning in a bottle. And if they play Kansas City in a series 10 times, maybe they win 5 or 6 or 7 of them. We'll never know. I mean, the Royals played great when they had to. A couple of key plays went the other, but Kansas City was a great team that year. And yeah, you can say they shoulda, coulda, woulda, but it wasn't like it was an upset. I don't think. I spent a lot of time around that Royals team and really grew to appreciate them over the course of that year. They played a beautiful brand of baseball, and they executed beautifully against the Blue Jays. And I think when it counted the most, they were just a little bit better in that series.
Dan, we're going to all watch together. 2 outs here, top of the 9th, with a 3-run lead here for the Blue Jays. Let's watch together here on Blue Jays Rewind Watch Party with our special guest, Dan Shulman.
93 wins for the Jays during the regular season.
He gets this final out, the roof is going to blow off this place. My goodness.
The 1-1.
He's just reaching back straight cheddar. Here it is. I'm bringing it.
There were no camera phones back in '93.
Off the plate.
There was no Roberto Osuna back in 1993.
Tell you, man, I got to give Dale Scott some props. You know how tough that is not to call that pitch right there?
Backdoor slider off the plate.
Tell you what, the Rangers didn't die, though. Every at-bat this half inning. Odor's at-bat was a good at-bat. Napoli just missed a double down the line. So did Odor down the right field line. Venables battled 3-2, getting good swings. It made it work.
Eighth pitch of the at-bat to Venable. The Blue Jays are headed to the American League Championship Series. Jose Bautista with a 3-run home run in the bottom of the 7th inning to send the Blue Jays to their first ALCS since 1993. A wild game. It took 3 hours, 37 minutes, including a 43-minute inning and then a 53-minute 7th inning that will go down in baseball history.
I have seen postseason games with beanball wars. I've seen postseason games with a fight in the bullpen in Fenway Park. I've seen a brawl between the Yankees and the Red Sox, but I've never seen the kind of raw emotion of a game like we saw today.
As the Blue Jays celebrate, down to the field, Ken.
Jose. Joe Carter once hit a really big home run here. You know all about it.
That's right.
I'm sure you've dreamed of hitting a home run like that. What was that feeling like at that moment?
Obviously, that home run was different. It's a walk-off, and it was in the World Series. And I can only hope that I get that same opportunity. But right now, we moved on. That was obviously a good result to that at-bat. I was looking for something up. I know he throws hard and a lot of thinkers. I swung the first one down. I just said, see it up, and I put a great swing on it, and it felt great. I'm still enjoying it.
On the scale of all the games you've ever played, where did this one rank in intensity?
Intensity and emotion. It's the most emotionally charged game that I've ever played. So many mood swings. We took the lead and we lost it, and all the stuff that was going on. Bottom line is we came out on top, and we got to enjoy the victory and move on.
Now, you had an epic bat flip. Was that the emotion of the moment of what had happened in the top half just taking over?
It's just the whole game, It's a big game. It's a do-or-die game on a tie series. Winner, obviously advances. I don't mean any disrespect. Whenever I do anything certainly didn't plan it. It was just a moment. I felt it, and I did it, and I'm just glad I was able to help out the team in that moment.
Jose, thank you very much. Kenny, back to you.
I'm exhausted.
I forgot how loud it was. That place was just bananas, man.
I remember sitting, I was covering, I was on the Rangers side, so I was in the visiting camera well, and much like Arash, when the crowd erupted, I mean, let's remember that the lower level seating at Rogers Center are movable bleachers because when they shared the facility with the Argonauts, it would transform into a football grid. And when people were jumping up and down, the whole place did feel like it was shaking, like it was a mini tremor. And I remember looking to my left into the Rangers dugout, and no one looked at each other. Everybody had no expression. I think they were in shock, and everybody just looked straight ahead. And it was fascinating to see. It was just like a morgue in there. You look over, and no one was talking to each other. Everybody was focused on what had just happened. I think they were really shell-shocked, and you're right. If you guys remember, there was a petition, if I'm not mistaken, for the roof to be opened for Game 5. Am I correct? And I think it was Major League Baseball's decision to keep it closed, and obviously to the Blue Jays' advantage.
If memory serves, I think it was before the series, Major League Baseball decided that all the games were going to be closed, but but if memory serves, I think it was actually unseasonably warm and pleasant, which is what had led to some of that discussion. But it's a different place when the roof is open, and it's obviously a much more pleasant experience. But when it's full and the roof is closed, it is super loud, and then you throw everything else into the mix. That created such a wild environment, and it's, especially with all that's going on now, it's weird to see a big crowd like that. But the thing that beyond the noise, I just remember the joy. There was just, people were just so happy, and that's what sports can do. Like, that feeling of unfettered joy is, to me, the enduring element of that game.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things. I mean, obviously, we're all missing a lot of things right now, but we shouldn't discount sports as being one of the most important ones. And obviously, for the four of us, we make our living in sports. It's really important to us. But whenever sports comes back, even if they come back without fans in the ballparks, without fans in the arenas, we don't know what sports are going to come back this summer. There are going to be eyeballs watching on TV and people listening on the radio. It gives people something to talk about. It gives us all a sense of community. It gives us something in common. We all remember where we were when Jose Bautista hit that home run. We probably all remember where we were when Joe Carter hit his home run. And that's what sports can do. And it was great to watch that, but I don't know about you guys. I really miss baseball right now, probably more than it feels like it's so close you can reach out and grab it, but you can't right now.
It was funny, 2 innings after hitting the home run, you could still sense the emotion from Bautista. And now nearly 5 years after he hit the home run, him telling us on the call tonight after watching it again, I still get chills. And I think when you look back at all the Blue Jays that have come through, position players, since the 92-93 team, for everything that Bautista represented during his time here, as wanting to be the leader, as the face of the franchise, as somebody who hit more than 50 home runs, it was fitting it was him. It was fitting it was him, and it was fitting that he gave a bat flip that he doesn't remember in the joy of it all, and what that represented was way beyond just his home run. That was one of those acts of, hey, we belong. This franchise belongs. Toronto belongs. And it felt like all of those fans appreciated it. And, holiday parties that December and since, you have the ugly Christmas sweaters with Merry Flippin' Christmas on them. It's Jose Bautista's face there.
All right, final thoughts. Shai Davidi, final thoughts before we get going here.
This is not a wrap-up thought, but I was thinking that as we were watching that after the home run, how unnecessary those final 2 innings felt. Like that game should have ended on that home run. It felt almost like we were watching like garbage time fourth quarter basketball on the blowout. But I think for me, just looking back at that, it's a special moment in time because it had come after that extended postseason drought, and it rekindled excitement for baseball across this country. Participation at the grassroots level spiked the following year. The demand for young kids playing baseball became so high that leagues couldn't accommodate them, and they had to turn away kids because there were just no more room. And I think that is part of the power of what happened that day. It was a great series. It's fun to look back. But Dan, I'm with you. I'm really missing the live stuff, and it's been fun taking these trips down memory lane. But I'm looking forward to when we get to the point where we can start making some new memories too.
All right, Arash, Dan, final thoughts, comments?
Like Shai said, I want to talk about the fans a little bit. I mean, you saw that scene, and it doesn't look much different than Washington or New York or LA or wherever else we've all been to playoff games in a number of different places. But even you could hear the Fox broadcast crew. Harold said it. He goes, man, they're going to blow the roof off this place. It's about as loud as anywhere you'll ever see. And I think we're all lucky to cover a team that has so many fans. We see it in Seattle and Minnesota and Cleveland and Detroit and Baltimore and so many places. And we know they're all there because, that we all live amongst them, and can't wait to just reconnect and have new stories to talk about. Maybe we'll be having a watch party, not because of bad reasons like we are now, like COVID, but maybe a few years from now we'll be having a watch party and Bo Bichette will come on, or Kevin Biggio, or Lourdes Gurriel, or Vladimir Guerrero. Maybe we're at the start of another ascension for this team, and that would be pretty fun. I'd love to get back and see what they could do if there is baseball this year and in the years to come.
Arash, you get the final say.
Well, I know Kansas City was really good that year, and they always say walk before you run, and they came that close the year prior to winning the World Series, getting to Game 7, and they were worthy champions. But watching that team again, seeing those faces in the dugout, not just Encarnacion and Donaldson and Bautista, but Martin still playing at a high level, and David Price and Mark Burley and R.A. Dickey. I'm still surprised they didn't win it that year. The run they were on, those 2.5 months, I likened them earlier in the show to the 2007 Patriots. Brady just throwing it up to Randy Moss, or they remind me of the Showtime Lakers. Like, they were a juggernaut, and it just felt like they couldn't be beat until they were. So just watching that team again, it reminds me just how damn good they were too.
John Gibbons said he thought that 2015 squad had it all, and that he really thought if one of his teams were going to go to the World Series and win it, it was that 2015 squad. Dan mentioned COVID-19, of course. The three of us are wearing our Conquer COVID-19 t-shirts. Please log on to conquercovid19.ca. You can pick up one of these t-shirts. All the money is going to help this grassroots, volunteer-driven organization to help our frontline workers get the much-needed PPEs. Dan Shulman, always a pleasure, sir. I'm sorry it's under these kind of circumstances because we're not working live games right now, but I appreciate you being with us. For
Enjoyed
Arash,
it. Thanks, guys. Good to see you.
Good to see you. We want to thank everybody that watched on Facebook, on YouTube, on sportsnet.ca, and of course Sportsnet 1. Thank you for joining us on this Rewind Blue Jays watch party. We all really got a big kick out of hearing from Jose Bautista on his big at-bat in Game 5 of the 2015 American League Division Series. That's it. Thank you, everybody. Just a quick note, you can see Games 4 and 5 again, encore presentation on Sunday beginning at 4 p.m. Eastern, followed by Game 5 at 7 p.m. Eastern. That's it. Thank you for joining us, everybody. Be safe, be healthy, and thank you once again to our frontline workers.